clerk please call the roll?
Councilmember Sorry. Councilmember Smith. Here. Councilmember Herbig.
Here.
Councilmember Baker.
Here.
Councilmember Danuski. Here. Councilmember Curtis.
Present.
Deputy Mayor Van Ness.
Here.
No,
Mayor-
you said council member, so I
I
answered.
apologize.
Don't you worry about it.
Okay.
So listen,
Mayor Baker.
when you move one of these mics, Scratchy, could we please just get rid of that one or send it out to get fixed?
Yes, sir.
Lori, if what happens if you move your,
It was.
it's somebody's. Anyway,
So at that point, do we like jump up and down and say, this is...
yeah, this is a bad one. Anyway, all right. NUD, do you guys need to do anything? No. Don't need to do anything. Okay, fine. Then let's just jump right in. If you will please stand and join Mr. Gardner in the flag salute.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, sir. All right, this is a joint meeting with the North Shore Utility District Board of Directors. And city update. So we want to start with the city update. Mr. Carlinzy, walkways and waterways.
Sure. Do we need to do introductions? Does
You want to go around? Yes, let's go around the table. Where should we start? Councilmember Curtis, you got the biggest smile. Let's start with you. I mean, Councilmember Smith.
How about a comment also?
No, you've got a bigger smile.
How about a comment about how long you've been on the council or the commission?
And if you can say how long you've been on the council or commission.
So, Milton Curtis, I'm in my third term.
Nigel Herbig, I'm finishing up my...
I'm David Baker. I think I'm in my fourth term.
Alan Van Ness, finishing up my third term.
Stacy Danuski in my first term.
The button up. The button needs to be up. Up.
Yep.
Is that better?
Yeah, it's better.
Don Ellis, Benevolent Chair of North Shore Utility District.
Rod Costaguma, Kenmore City Attorney.
Robert Peterson, second term.
I'm Bruce Gardner. I don't know how many terms, but it's 22, 26 years. Sam Lacey, first.
Fanny Yee, started my 38th year with the district.
Wow.
Al Nelson, North Shore Utility District, going on 11 years.
I'm Dave Kaiser. I've been with the district for 15 years.
I'm Steve Hamilton, and I've been with the district almost.
Rob Carlinzy, and I'm still in my first term.
Chris Overlease, Public Works Director, and I'm with him. I've been with the city almost 5 years. Debbie Bank, Community Development Director.
Steve Schomer, IT Director, North Shore Utility, and I'm trying to catch up on Fanny. I'm 30 years there.
Lori Sperry, council member, and this is my third term.
All right. Welcome. We're glad that you guys are here. And I really enjoy these joint meetings because it really lets us know what's going on with each other. And we're so close to each other, but we're so far apart. So it's always good when we get together and see what's going on. So now we'll start with Mr. Collinsy and walkways and waterways, I guess.
Yes, thank you, Your Honor. So Kenmore is such an exciting city to work for. We have so many great fundamental assets about the city that make it so great, and yet Kenmore has so much potential. And I always like to say that Kenmore is on an upward trajectory of becoming And we are in a constant state of becoming, and that's the kind of city I like to work for. And so one of the big ways we're on that trajectory is through the Walkways and Waterways bond measure that passed last November, and I assume most, if not all of you, are aware of that. But we actually started more than a year before with the Imagine Kenmore process. It was an initiative to go out to the citizens and ask them what they wanted in the way of park improvements and traffic safety improvements. And so we did a lot of public meetings and surveys and online interactive methods, just trying to find out what our citizens wanted, and hundreds participated, and we were able to get a lot of good feedback. And what boiled to the top of that process was get me to the water. So the public wanted more public access to our waterfront, and pedestrian and bicycle safety on arterials. So with that information, we went into the data and information even further, and we put together a bond package that had 3 waterfront parks and also new sidewalks and bike lanes on our main north-south arterial, Juanita Drive and 68th Avenue. And so we took that package to the voters. It was just under $20 million bond measure. And we asked the voters if they would say yes to that. And long story short, very long story made short, they said yes. And we got a 64% voter approval on that. 60% was needed. And as soon as the bond passed, we immediately had to make that trip down to San Francisco for our bond rating case that we made to Standard & Poor's. And I think it's because NUD had a AAA bond rating, and they said, well, they're in the same district, so why don't we give them a AAA bond rating too? So they gave us one as well. Anyway, the 3 projects, and you can see there's a map here. The 3 park projects are Log Boom Park. There's going to be some access and trail improvements there and a new beach. And then Rhododendron Park will get a new boardwalk from the playfield down to the water, and there will also be a new hand carry dock coming in, hopefully later this year. And then Squires Landing Park is also going to get a makeover. At least 11 of the 40 acres are. And there's a man-made lagoon there that's going to get a lot of improvements, including new docks, and there's going to be new trails and natural open space improvements and things like that at Squires. And then, like I said, our main north-south arterial is going to get curb gutter sidewalks. On the Juanita section, it's going to get curb gutter sidewalks and buffered bike lanes on the east side. And on 68th Avenue, it's going to get sidewalks on the west side. Why does this not have blue on it? What is this? This section here either has sidewalks already or funded sidewalks from a different funding source, including the Sammamish River Bridge, which Chris is going to talk about in a minute. So right now we're in the design phase for all these. The City Council just recently authorized us to sign design contract agreements with the designers for all of these projects. And what we're telling the public is these should be all installed in the early to mid-2020s. If you want to pin me down for a year, I'm going to say 2023. Does that seem like a long time from now? Well, just remember what ST3 is promising, and then you'll realize it's not so long.
Compared to what, right?
Yes. So, any questions on walkways and waterways? All right. Well, Your Honor, if I may, can I have Debbie Bent and Chris Overlease give us a high-level overview of the rest of our capital improvement plan?
Absolutely.
Okay.
think we found the mic that crackled. Sorry. So I believe you have handed out, there was, oh, here it is, right up there, look at that. This is an overview of the city's capital improvement plan, divided into parks, transportation, and surface water. And I'm going to briefly hit the parks project. There are 9 park capital improvement projects, 3 of which Rob just recently described, which are part of the Walkways and Waterways bond measure. So the 6 other projects, we have Twin Springs Park, and that's the where the Brightwater project used to be, on the east side of 80th, around the intersection of 80th and 192nd. So we acquired that property from King County last year. So this project will be looking at what we can do as an interim measure to be able to open that park up to the public. It's the only park there in the northeast corner of the city. The Tolt Pipeline project, so that's right next door to Nudd. We'll be doing the trail improvement there between 68th and just about 71st Avenue. So we'll be putting a walkable trail in there, and that's we've awarded that construction contract, so that will be under construction in May. We have a rhododendron park float or dock right at Rhododendron Park. We are in the permitting process, trying to get that constructed this year or maybe next year, we'll see. I do apologize. Squires Landing Dock. There is an existing dock there. This is a dock replacement project, and again, we're working towards getting that into construction either later this year or next year. And the last project is the St. Edward Ballfield project. There is, those of you familiar with St. Edward State Park, there is an existing grass ballfield up there. We are working towards a lease agreement with State Parks that would allow the city to improve that grass ballfield. Thank you. To artificial turf and field lighting. So that's a project that we're working out the terms of a lease. We're working through some permitting issues, and that could be a potential project for construction in 2018 or 19. So that's at a very high level, the 9 park projects. I'm now going to turn it over to Chris, who's going to talk about the roads and surface water capital projects. Thanks, Deb. Do you mind putting the walkways and waterways map back up? I thought maybe we could talk about where some of these projects are. So for the transportation CIP, if you just kind of go from the top down, our 522 West Day project is mostly done. City and Nudd were partners on that project, which worked out really, really well. We're very grateful for how that project went. So we're in closeout mode on that project right now. The 522 West B, which is the very western end of the city, you can see that very last piece of 522 that Kenmore has to do is way out in the CIP. We received Connecting Washington funds from the state, and so that's just when the money got programmed. We have a lot of sidewalk work that we want to do. The first one I was going to mention, well, if you look at the list going down, so the 181st Street work, we were partners with Nudd on those as well. Those projects are done, but for some punch list items. So that's right out here between 73rd Avenue and 68th on each side. And I think it worked. We had multiple grants on those projects, which is why we had them in 2 separate construction projects. So Rob's pointing out right now, there was some sidewalk existing out there, but we finished what needed to be done. We're very happy about the pedestrian crossing we put in right by Safeway, those rectangular rapid flashing beacons, the RRFBs. So moving down the list, the 202nd Street project is actually out to, no, we opened bids on that. That's up by Kenmore Junior High. So we'll be putting some sidewalk on the south side of 202nd and then up 66 to hook in with the school. So we got a Safe Routes to Schools grant for that. So that will go to construction this summer. And let's see, 62nd Avenue Northeast. We had another grant for that project. So we're going to be building sidewalk on the east side of 62nd. I believe John, the project manager, told me we're opening bids next week on this sidewalk piece. So 62nd Avenue east side from 181st kind of up to where it splits off to 187th Place.
and it'll just be on the east side of the street. Yep, that's the northern terminus, and we will have traffic circles at each of those intersections. So stay tuned for that one going to construction. The rest of the sidewalk projects we listed here are pending. We believe we're going to make the state legislature's cut for the Northeast 153rd Place sidewalk. That's down by Arrowhead Elementary. So a couple blocks of sidewalk there on the south side. So that's just pending legislature approval. It happens to be that around the corner on Arrowhead, we have a Safe Routes to Schools project that is the first below the estimated cut line. So we're working now to encourage the legislature to make that program a little larger dollar-wise so we can get that project into the list. Let me see. So I think the one big project that I haven't mentioned yet, and then I'll be done with transportation. Rob already talked about the walkways and waterways, and it's the West Sammamish River Bridge project. So I think most folks know, but this project is between 170th Street and Northeast 175th Street, and it's replacing the southbound structure across the river, so there's actually two separate bridges. So our project is replacing the southbound, and we are funded to about the $20 million level. We are waiting to get our 30% design documents, hopefully within the next month or two. So we'll get 30% design and updated cost estimate, but our goal is to go to construction with this project in 2019. So actually get design done this year and next year, any right-of-way acquisition that we need to do once we identify that, but it'll be here before you know it. So that is transportation. I won't get into the surface water projects in as much detail, but I will point out, given the recent rains and the flooding of the roadway we had, up at 192nd between 73rd and 80th, Rob's going to scroll up there, we have a culvert replacement. And so we have a culvert fish passable project. And we actually, that's out to bid right now, and we'll go to construction this summer. And I believe that we've been working with NUT on that project as well for a partnership. So that's a common theme with our projects, both working together to get work we both want done. I think that's all I will mention for capital. Thank you. That was great.
So downtown redevelopment?
Downtown redevelopment.
Okay. Another favorite topic, downtown redevelopment. And because your offices are so close to here, you've been eyewitnesses of what's been going on down here. But about 12, 13 years ago, the city assembled a bunch of land. The city bought with cash about 10 acres of land right out here. And the purpose was to spark downtown redevelopment and also to fulfill the 2003 downtown business plan. And when we incorporated back in '98, one of the first orders of business was to help Kenmore get its own real downtown sense of place, and a place-making for the community rather than just being a residential pass-through city, as some people have referred to us. And so with that kind of aggressive move by the city, acquiring all that land, over the years the city has sold it back to the private sector with conditions for redevelopment. And the first property to go was Kenmore Camera. Kenmore Camera was able to buy this property right here. And by so doing, they were able to stay in town and triple their square footage. And they continue to do really well as a business here. The next property to go was the old King County Park and Ride. And that's now the Spencer 68 apartments. There's about 200 units on that lot. And then the next property to go was this parcel right here, which is now known as The Link at Spencer Square. And that's a 6-story building, First floor, the ground floor, is parking. The next floor is 20,000 square feet of medical office, and Evergreen Health is going to be moving in there and open for business likely in October. There's also more parking on that second level. And then the rest of the floors, the remaining 4 floors, are all residential. And those units have been opening and have been moved into just in the last few weeks. Several of those units have as they become ready. So residents are living in that building, and the Evergreen tenant improvements are likely to get underway here in the next few weeks or few months. But like I said, they want to be open and ready for business in October of this year. The downtown plan called for 3 civic components in this part of town. Called for a library, a city hall, and a community center. And the downtown plan thought that they would all be located in one complex. Well, that's not how it turned out. We are getting all 3 of those civic components, but they are in this quadrant as the downtown plan suggested, but they are all on separate parcels. So as you know, we got the new library in 2011. We got the new City Hall in 2010, and that's the building we are all in right now. And the community center is the last piece of this civic puzzle to come together here in the downtown. And it's going in right here at this corner. And so, like I said, the city acquired about 10 acres and has been selling it back in chunks back to the private sector for redevelopment. But the city decided to keep this corner for itself. And the city decided to construct a town square right here. And because of our climate, we wanted a year-round gathering place, not just a 3 months out of the year gathering place. So the city built that community center, or the third component of the downtown plan. Now, our community center may not be what you typically think of as a community center. We're a little non-traditional that way. We have a community center that's meeting the size of our city. It's a small year-round living room. And it's about a 4,600 square foot building. We're calling it the Hangar. Why do we call it the Hangar? Because of our seaplane heritage. Yes, we are the self-proclaimed seaplane capital of the U.S. And we actually do have the largest seaplane port in the U.S. here in Kenmore, as many of you may know. And the building actually has a really big door that resembles the door on an airplane hangar. So it's a really beautiful building. It was designed by Graham Baba Architects. They've done a lot of the newer Douglas, what's the first name, restaurants. Help me out. Tom Douglas restaurants, yeah, and places like that. The building will have it does have a big door on it that opens up. It also have 2-sided fireplace, and it's going to have some retail in there. About a quarter of the space is going to be coffee, baked goods, ice cream, things like that. Also beer and wine. That tenant is Diva Espresso. We have a signed lease with them, and they are likely to move in June. So they need to go in and start working on their tenant improvements. And so when they're in, then we'll open up the whole building for the public. The town square itself is complete and is already available to the public now. There's one really cool feature about the town square, and it's not the hot rocks. It's the really cool water fountain.
It is cool, I agree.
Donated by North Shore Utility District. So it's really cool because it has the buttons for the drinking, and then it has a third button. Do you guys know what it's for? It's for the dogs. It's really fun to push. So, in addition, we do have some hot rocks, and they are in a state of needing to get working. So we trying to figure that out.
So they're cold rocks now, right?
They're cold rocks right now. They're just rocks, yeah. But we also have there's a water feature that's part of that as well. It'll have those vertical jets that shoot up randomly, and we're going to have some horizontal jets shooting out, and then at night they'll be lit different colors, and so it'll be pretty fun. So it's going to be a pretty fun gathering place for our community, and something that our community's been anticipating for quite a while. One last thing is, if you look up here, if you can see where I'm putting the cursor, this is what is now known as the restaurant pad. So Main Street Property Group is the main developer for the rest of the site. They have an option to purchase the restaurant pad, and they can only purchase that, they can only exercise the option to purchase that pad when they have produced a lease with a sit-down restaurant. That option that they have expires in 11 days. So we'll see what they want to do. They can, for a sum of money, they can extend that option for another 6 months. I don't know if they will. But so far, they have not produced a lease with a sit-down restaurant, so stay tuned on that. Any questions about downtown redevelopment?
What's the hours of the
Good question.
Yeah, the hangar building, if it's in the newspaper, the hours are. There was an article. I want to say, I can't remember, 6 p.m. or on, I think 8 p.m. on weekends, and I wish I remembered. I'm the one who negotiated the lease, and I can't even remember. So, but there's some papers out there, and maybe during the break I'll grab them and go, and I'll answer your question.
Do you have any easier questions?
It'll be opened early in the morning, that's for sure.
Early for sure, huh?
Yeah. Yeah, they're these big boulder-sized rocks that you can sit on, and they're going to be heated, yeah. It'll be, don't think of them as like hot and steamy. Think of more like your heated car seat, and it'll be that kind of a feeling. We got to get them working first.
They kind of are hot and
So, like Britt said, they're just rocks for now. And if any of you want a sneak peek of the inside of this space, if you don't want to wait till June, just give me a call and I'll take you over there and I'll demonstrate the big door. It's really fun to open that thing. So
It's really cool. It's worth it.
yeah.
Yeah, Rod gave me a private tour.
So you
when we went
agree?
out to
Yeah.
lunch.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Moves a little faster than the roof of Safeco Field.
That's funny.
Yeah. Any other questions on downtown redevelopment?
Looks exciting.
Lake Point?
Now the
Okay.
big one.
All right, so Lake Point is also considered part of our downtown. It's just a different quadrant of our downtown. And and you can see right here, this is Lake Point. It's about 45 to 48 acres, depending on what you're counting. But this is quite a big chunk of land right on the shores of the lake. And it is the last of its kind in size on Lake Washington. And it's a great opportunity for redevelopment here in our great city. And as you know, for many decades, it's languished, and it's been largely vacant. It has served some industrial purposes, including the bridge component construction for the SR 520 bridge. So a lot of the bridge decking and anchoring has been built here. Much to our chagrin, the old bridge demolished materials from the old bridge came through Kenmore, but that's wrapping up, and they'll be off that site by the end of this month. So the owner of the property is an entity called Pioneer Towing, towing as in barge towing, but they haven't done any barge towing in decades, so they're more like a holding company now. But Pioneer Towing owns this entire lot, which is nice. It's good that it's not broken up into different parcels. And Pioneer Towing is in a purchase and sale agreement with a developer named Widener. And Widener is actually headquartered right there in Juanita, right next to Michael's. You know the white office building right next to Juanita Beach there? That's Widener headquarters. Widener owns mostly apartments in several states and Canadian provinces. And it's a company that got started in the 1970s, and they've grown a lot since then. But Dean Widener is the owner of this company, and he personally is involved with this project. The hope is to do anywhere between 1,200 and 2,000 residential units. There'll be a mix of apartments and condominiums or townhomes. And also looking to do about 500,000 square feet of commercial, which would be a combination of office and retail, and also possibly a hotel and a marina. So we have been interacting with the Widener team for a couple of years now. They have, like I said, they have a purchase and sale agreement on the property, but they don't close on the property until they're ready, and especially until they know what they want to do and when they get the land use entitlements for what they want to do. So they're continuing to work on the vision or the story for what they want there. They had what they call a visioning session, or also known as a plussing session, a couple of weeks ago to drill down a little further on the kind of development Lake Point should be. So, but at a high level, it's between 1,200 and 2,000 units, 500,000 square feet of commercial, and a hotel possibly. Timeline is they're going to crystallize that vision or that story here in the next few weeks, and then they'll have some milestones to meet with the city. And if I were a betting man, they're probably going to be breaking ground, if they break ground at all. But if they were to break ground, I would bet it would be in the year 2022 or 2023. And it's going to, once they start construction, it's a 10-year-long phased project. So it's another, so we're talking 2033 possibly before the whole project's done. Could be well over $1 billion project. So this is something that really is going to transform a major quadrant of our downtown. It will add significantly to our assessed value for property taxes. And really, I think, put Kenmore on the map, if Kenmore isn't on the map already. So, any questions?
Does that include the Rinker property too, the CMEX?
It does not. So that's a great question. So this is the Cal Portland Cemex property. This is a separately owned parcel by kind of a parent company called Fuya out of Japan. But the grand plan has this Cemex Cal Portland property wrapped into it. I think that's an eventuality, but currently it's not controlled by Widener.
That Cemex property includes that building too.
Oh, right here?
Yeah.
Yes, that's correct, Mayor. One thing we need to be sensitive about is our seaplane harbor. Building sizes, marina features, things like that need to make sure that seaplane operations are safe and unobstructed. So that's an important component we'll need to consider. But back in the year 2013, in our budget, we set what we call a man on the moon goal. So what the goal was is that by the year 2023, so 10 years later, we want to be breaking ground on this project. So I still think that that's possible as long as this current developer stays in the game.
All right. Any questions on anything?
Any future plans on plywood supply?
You know, there's been talk, but no, they're happy where they are.
Our 2003 downtown plan has some ideas, but nothing more than that at this point. One thing I hope that you guys may know about is, right here along this stretch of road are those big, giant sewer mains, or sewer mains singular or plural, one or two of them. I never.
Are you talking about the King counties?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh.
Those 6-foot-tall sewer mains. Sewer mains, yes. So those obviously need to stay put where they are and need to be worked around. Here's that pump station right here. But is there an opportunity to somehow harness the energy that is supplied in all that goop? And so that's a question the developer's asking. Could this be a project with a low carbon footprint that taps into the energy from all of the methane gas that is passing by?
So I'll let Dave.
Well, if you built a wastewater treatment plant for $1 billion, you might get $100,000 worth of methane. Yes, there is.
So, I mean, in 10 years, it'd pay for itself, right?
You know that size, that pipe, I could walk right through it without bending.
Yeah, I know. I think I could too.
Anything else? No? All right.
Okay.
Nud, Fanny.
Yes. Okay. I got one more agenda item. Didn't make it on here. We're going to give you a operating result financial report also about the district. Of course, our projects are pretty boring. Water and sewer, not as exciting as the city, but
So that means that financial report is good, right? And there's no rate increases, right?
There is, but wait, stay tuned. First, I want to talk to you about the district. After serving Kenmore area for almost 40 years, I'll be retiring end of this year. And Al Nelson here will be taking over.
Congratulations, Al.
Rob's been a really good municipal partner to me. You guys may not know it, but we go lunch every 3 months or so, and we work together really well. So I told him that I've seen all the city managers you guys had since the city was that.
There's only two.
Huh?
He's only the third. It's not that many.
Okay, but you guys are not that old either. But he's the best one I work with. So you guys have finally found the right guy. The next item is the capital improvement. I guess Dave will talk to you about that.
Right, I brought a handout. Before I share this with you, I just wanted to mention something that our engineering staff wanted to share with the city, and that is we want to thank you for the coordination, everything you provide. You do the best job of any of the cities that we work with in the development review process. You invite us to your pre-application meetings. We have an inbox over here for any of the new applications that come in. Our staff provides unsolicited compliments to your staff in their professionalism, their inclusiveness. They treat us as if we are part of your city. We're a utility that's not an afterthought. They're very knowledgeable. We come to the meetings, like I say, and I've been coming to them now for a very short while because our regular developer engineer has been out for a period of time. But I find that, like I said, I find your staff to be very knowledgeable, professional, and it's really a nice relationship that you guys are fostering and building. So I just wanted to pass that on and let you know that we appreciate that. As Fanny mentioned, we're water and sewer. We don't get to build hot rocks, and we don't have a large garage door. So I thought maybe that you could share one or two per sheet because they're sort of large. And I'll just go over a few things. I'll just hit the highlights. I won't go through the detail.
making them big, though. That's nice.
Yeah.
We'll share a little.
No, you and me.
Yeah, pretty well.
Yeah, you're upside down. There you go.
So the work that we do, we break it down into basically three primary categories: the developer-driven projects, the capital improvement projects, and then we have the projects where we are working with the various cities in impacts to our facilities that are generated by the projects you do. So we work with Chris on those type of projects where you're rebuilding your highways or replacing culverts. A lot of times we'll have to move our facilities or coordinate the effort. Just a couple of the highlights. The green are the developer extension projects. I couldn't list all of them. We have probably 75 projects in various stages of development because we do, if you look at the map, we do provide service to a fairly large area from Totem Lake to Lake Forest Park. Where we focus our efforts in the capital improvement projects are water main replacement. We've done an asset management. We've prepared an asset management program where we've identified the remaining water mains that we need to replace, and those would be the PVC or the asbestos cement water mains. So we've got about $10 million worth of water main replacement that is scheduled for the next 6 years. That's probably not going to get done because we are now more focused on what's happening in Totem Lake. And the city of Kirkland out in Totem Lake, I don't know if you've been out that way lately, but they're redeveloping the mall, and the city has actually rezoned that area to allow for much more intense redevelopment. And they've got a couple of different alternatives out there as to what they believe will take place. And they're estimating either 14,000 additional multifamily units in the Totem Lake area alone over the next 20 years to perhaps around 5,000. So they sort of sprang this idea on us last year, and we decided we needed to take a look at the capacity in our sewer and water systems out in Totem Lake, and we discovered that, well, we're going to have issues with 14,000 more multifamily residents moving into that area. So we've identified $9 million worth of improvements that we need to build in Totem Lake to provide for that demand. And so that's coming. So we put that ahead of the water main replacement. We're still going to pursue the water main replacement, but just not as aggressively as we had thought. And so we'll be spending a considerable amount of money out in Totem Lake improving the systems out there. A few of the other highlights: we are doing a little bit of work at our headquarters here next door. We've got some leaky roofs. We're going to replace the roof. And inspired by the city, we're considering adding not hot rocks, but solar panel project. We might, if we can get the payback on that. We've been given some grants, and so we're considering a solar panel project. But we need to replace the roof. We've got 16 the holes in the roof. We have 16 of those to replace. The skylights, we're going to replace those, and so we're doing a little bit of work at the headquarters. And then we are impacted by the bridge project. Like I said, a lot of the work that you do does impact our facility. So we're going to replace a considerable amount of sewer along near the bridge project, and in conjunction with the Rhododendron Park project, we've got some impacts there. And then the water main from along 68th, we're going to replace that water main from 175th down to Simons Road. So that is going to be part of the bridge project ultimately. So those are some of the highlights. Just wanted to share those with you and appreciate your time.
Okay, Steve.
Deputy Mayor.
Thank you. The Totem Lake addition is in addition to what you had in your long-term plan.
It is.
Okay. Where does the funding come from to do this?
We adopted a special connection charge for any property that would discharge into the facilities that serve Totem Lake. So we have what
Like
we
an
call-
impact fee?
Yep, just for those
Okay.
properties.
That's what I was driving at.
Right. So
If all of
you-
our fees have to be increased to pay for 14,000 residents.
No, they're going to
over
pay
there,
their own.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
Uh-huh.
Anybody else?
One more.
Yeah.
Thank you. Mine's probably by far the least exciting of everything. I share Fanny's sentiment, and we don't get to build community centers and stuff like that. It'd be a lot of fun. The district, we're sitting in pretty good financial position. We're almost debt free. In 2013, we paid off all of our revenue bonds. We currently have about $3.7 million in debt, all with the Public Works Trust Fund. Excuse me. And those interest rates range from 0.5 to 1% interest. So we're paying that down at about a rate of about $350,000 a year, which will increase. So it probably, I think, 7 years or so we'll have that paid off. Since 2008, the district has increased its investment in sewer and water utility plants by almost 30%. The first chart on my handout that I hope everybody got a copy of just shows the annual amount that we have put into place in our water and sewer utility plants. This does not include any of the construction in progress that we've got going on every year. We've got a lot of that going on. The second chart down at the bottom shows the actual balance at the end of each year of our construction in progress accounts. During the recession of 2007 and 2008, the district took advantage of the low construction costs, and we started building a lot and putting those utility plants in place. And the district continues to invest very aggressively in its capital improvement projects. If you flip the page over, as Mayor Baker said earlier, we were hoping for no rate increase, but unfortunately, King County and Seattle Public Utilities didn't help us out there much. We received increases in our wholesale rates from King County by 4.8% this year, and by Seattle Public Utilities by 8.3%. But even with those increases, we were able to keep our increase to our average single-family residential customer less than those percentage increases. So we're pretty pleased with that. I've got copies of our actual rate notification letter, which these last two tables are just excerpts from. If you'd like to, I'll leave them here if you'd like to pick one up. But what this shows, the far left-hand column is NUD. That's our rate for our average single-family home, and it shows other King County utility providers there. If you look at the first one, which is water, you'll see that NUD is lower than everybody there, with the exception of Bothell inside the city limits. And if you look at the sewer in the green below it, we are the lowest. Ronald is pretty close, but we're still beating them.
So why the difference there with inside the city limits with Bothell?
I'm sorry?
Why the difference with inside the limits for the city of Bothell?
It's the city's policy.
Yeah.
It's charge one rate for folks inside the city, and then they have sale for folks outside the city.
And it's a flat 25% right across the board for everything they sell. All of their base rates, all of their usage rates are 25% higher if you're outside of the city limits.
So I guess I'm wondering why inside is so cheap.
Why are they so cheap?
Yeah.
I don't know. Now, every utility is different. Our district look at our rate every year. Whether we adjust it or not, that's a different story, but we look at it every year. But not every utility look at it every year. But I don't, that's their decision.
And these are non-taxed rates as well. So they have Bothell has both a water and a sewer utility tax that they attach. And to keep things fair, we didn't include any of our franchise fee uplifts. So.
Okay. Any other questions? All right. I guess that wraps things up. Anything else you want to add, Mr. Carlinzy?
I just want to congratulate Fanny and Al. You've made a great team over the years, and sometimes you've played good cop, bad cop. I won't say which one is the good and which one is the bad. Maybe you've alternated your roles. But I just want to echo back Fanny's comment. She's been great to work with. She runs a real tight ship for all of you. And I think on behalf of Kenmore residents, we're grateful that NUD's been able to keep our rates low. That's a big deal. And you know, there's a lot of people on fixed incomes, low incomes in Kenmore. So saving our citizens dollars like that means a lot. But we also know that that's due to really good management on Fanny's part and the board's part for all these years. So congratulations, and I think you're going to have more fun in retirement based on what you've been telling me. So.
Thank you, Rob.
Well, Rob, I've been telling her just the opposite. She should stay. Forget retirement. But anyway, thank you so much for that.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you, guys.
Well, thank you for dinner.
Yes, you're entirely welcome. And it would really be good, and Fanny, I know that you're not. This is going to be the last one you're involved with, but it'd really be good that we do this on the yearly thing, because things change over the course of the year, and it would be nice to see this happen again next spring. So we'll look forward to it.
Okay.
Thank you, Fanny. Thank you for everything that you've done over the years, and
I had fun.
that's what's important. All right, so we'll adjourn here for 6 minutes or so.
Thanks for hosting us. Yep.
Back in session. Citizen comments. This is an opportunity for you to express your views on issues that are important to you and to the community. We ask that you please hold your comments to 3 minutes. Normally we have a timer. We're not there, but the clerk will be keeping time. There are a lot of people here. I know you want to be heard. We understand that, but please don't repeat yourself. If one person has said something, please don't repeat it 10 or 15 more times. But with that, clerk, please call the first person. Oh, but one more thing. There's no action going to be taken. The issue that you're here for tonight is not on the agenda. It will be on a future agenda. It has not been scheduled yet, though, from my understanding. So I don't know how it got out that we were going to vote on it tonight, because we're not. We will get it back again at another council meeting that will be noticed 2 weeks out or a week out.
10 days out.
10 days out. So you will have plenty of notice, but nothing will be acted on tonight. So with that.
Jim McFedridge. Step to the podium.
If it's okay procedurally, I'd like to let Chuck go first. Is that okay?
Well, usually we go from the list. Where's Chuck on the list?
Number 5.
Yeah, I don't really see a problem with that. Mr. Crouch, if you want to go first, that's just fine.
Charles Crouch. I live at 7409 Northeast 200th Street. I have a handout for you.
If you will give that to the clerk, that would be great. That nice lady over there that's waving at you. No, over here. Over here. She's going to wave at you. There you go.
Thank you.
There should be enough handouts there, one for each council member.
Okay.
And the clerk needs one, I hope, and
I'll take all of them for you.
it's okay.
Thank you so much.
Well, happy spring. Thanks for letting us come out. So, I'm here to address the City Council because I believe current city codes and standards are incorrectly burdensome on some businesses, including mine. If they currently are left as they are, I will be out of business. Last fall, our landlord split up the properties, which made us have to move across the parking lot. We moved units and we started the permitting process. We expected the normal ADA codes to make some bathrooms like bathroom changes and parking lot regulations, which would bring about some cosmetic changes because the building we're in is about 50 years old. You know, what we got was, we got that stuff, but then on top of that, we also got parking lot enhancements, which actually aren't a problem. We actually exceed the number of parking spots we need. We had a traffic impact fee. It was originally assessed at $47,000, but working with Zach, it got bumped down to $30,000. And number three were some sidewalk construction that needed to take place of $105,000. The traffic impact fees, TIFs, of this size are out of reach for a business like mine. But more than that, they are largely unattainable to businesses that would prevent further growth in the city, I believe, in the city of Kenmore. There is a point to growth that growth should pay for growth, but in this case, I think it prevents growth for small businesses, certainly for mine. More troublesome than the TIFs is the sidewalk construction imposed on businesses. The current law, as written in the City of Kenmore Road Standards 1.06, states that the change of use project requires sidewalks to be constructed. I know why you guys do that, and I thank you that you guys are reaching for sidewalks all over the city. But if enforced, it would cost us about $100,000, that project, on our parcel. You know, the city of Shoreline actually did something similar with traffic impact fees. On July 21st of 2014, they enacted traffic impact fees, Ordinance 690, Shoreline Municipal Code 12.40.010.
Mr. Crouch, 30 seconds.
Thank you. Then a few businesses came to them and they said, hey, these are too burdensome. We want to do business in your city, but we can't afford the traffic impact fee. So after adjusting it about a year later, the next July, they enacted Code 717, which added an amendment to the traffic impact fees, which waived traffic impact fees for small businesses. So I'm here to make a suggestion, kind of like similar to what Brian Hampson proposed last Monday.
Minutes.
Go ahead, just wrap it up, Chuck.
He proposed to reduce the traffic impact fee to $7,500 and enact the extension for parking lot waivers. I would say the same thing, only I would suggest waivers for traffic impact fees for small businesses and connect the road standards to the same traffic impact fees requirements. So if a business small like mine has trouble paying for it, it's not going to happen. I have a suggestion for you on the last page of that, and I also have the Shoreline Municipal Code printed up for you, the amendment options. You'll see on the second page there's a chart of all the businesses that get an exemption from that traffic impact fee. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Crouch.
Jim.
Hi, I'm Jim McFetridge. I'm a resident of 22811 58th Drive Southeast in Bothell. And I came in because I'm a CrossFit member, but also because I work in construction, have a little bit more experience with the codes and so forth than Chuck does. And one of the things I'd have to say, in looking at the code here in Kenmore, I was really impressed with the discretion that the traffic impact fee code gives to the city manager, where he can assess the fairness. And that's something that a lot of jurisdictions don't have. Unfortunately, the frontage improvements don't allow the same discretion. So the city manager doesn't have the option to look at what's reasonable and what's fair. So when a business moves into a large business park and they take just a small portion but change the use, they could be subjected to full frontage improvements for the entire parcel, which is disproportionate and unfair. The other thing is, in the 2011 version of the traffic code, it imposed a minimum of 10 trip counts. So if you generated less than 10 trip counts, you had an exemption. The 2016 code removed that exception. So that's one of the things we'd like to throw out for you to consider, which would tie to what Mr. Crouch was saying about the small businesses. So if you generate only a few trip counts, is it really fair for you to pay a large traffic impact fee? That's all I wanted to add. Thank you.
Thank you.
Amanda, will you be speaking?
Hi, my name is Amanda McFetridge. I'm 14 years old, and I work out at CrossFit Kenmore 3 or 4 days a week. I live at 22811 58th Drive Southeast, 98021 Bothell. I love CrossFit because it challenges me physically and mentally, and it's not just a gym, but it's a community. I work out, like I said, 3 or 4 days a week, and every day that I go, there's a brand new workout, and it holds new challenges for me. I have a lot of challenges, things that I can't do or things that I can do. And it challenges me to lift more weight or perfect a movement more or just keep working hard in a movement that maybe I don't like as much or I really just can't do. I love CrossFit Kenmore because it also challenges me mentally, not physically, physically and mentally. When I am in a new situation and I'm nervous about it, such as speaking in front of the city council, I like to think about lifting at CrossFit because that is what makes me feel confident and empowered, and it calms me down and it helps me to know that I'm the girl that can lift this much weight at the gym, and so I should be fine in this new situation, and I should be able to introduce myself to new people and to feel fine about that. Lastly, I love CrossFit Kenmore because when I go to the gym to work out, the people there encourage me and we lift each other up in whatever movements we're doing, whether they're really simple movements or they're really complex movements. We talk about nutrition and what foods can help us to perform our very best at the workouts. So I love CrossFit Kenmore because it challenges me both physically and mentally, and because it's not just a gym but a community. I hope you consider what I've said today.
Thank you, Ms. McFitridge. And I have to compliment you. Awesome job. It's not every day we get a well-spoken young lady like you. So thank you very much. You did an outstanding job.
Jocelyn Halverson.
Good evening. My name is Jocelyn Halverson. I live at 1718 236th Place Southwest. It is a Bothell address, unfortunately, but it's up the street.
Oh, we like Bothell people, too.
There you go. There you go. I'm here tonight to speak against the $47,000 traffic impact fee assessed against CrossFit Kenmore. Partly, this is my husband's work. He's a real estate appraiser, so, but it's a good start. Initially, CrossFit Kenmore was converted from a warehouse to a gym, a space where boxes were stored, and now it's a space for exercise. The physical space required a few minor alterations to change from a warehouse to a gym. The use changed, not the physical space. For instance, it was not changed from a warehouse to a restaurant or similar intensive use. Additionally, the parking spaces needed for CrossFit Gym is the same number as was previously needed, again, indicating similar intensity of use. We, the members, do not show up all at the same time or even on the same days, meaning that the traffic impact change to the street is nominal. Next is my part. So CrossFit was formally established in 2000 and now is international. Today, there are over 10,000 affiliates internationally. The CrossFit Games currently are being held, and there are nearly 325,000 participants from 175 countries. This includes the very fittest all the way to the over 55-year-olds with a delightfully scaled version of the fittest workout. In CrossFit's view, the goal is general physical preparedness. A few of the attributes of CrossFit training are cardiorespiratory health, endurance, stamina, strength, agility, flexibility, and balance. Most of us don't live our lives as professional athletes, but exercise to do our jobs more effectively, to serve our families in a healthy and complete way, to lift our grandchild, and to hike in our beautiful Northwest more effectively. The Center of Disease Control and Prevention, the CDC,
30 seconds.
Healthy People 2020 has 4 overreaching goals. 2 of these most applicable to CrossFit: attained high-quality, longer lives free of preventable disease, disability, injury, and premature death, and create social and physical environments that promote good health for all. CrossFit does this beautifully. It's a privilege to have CrossFit Kenmore as a part of our community. And not only does it create a connection from our cozy community to the world.
Mayor, we're at 3 minutes.
Thank you. I'll just finish the sentence, if I may. But it contributes to the CDC Healthy People's 2020 goal for our nation. It'd be a shame to see it close. So, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Alverson.
Laura Cymbalin.
Good evening. I'm Laura Cymbalin. I live at 18325 83rd Place, Northeast Kenmore. I was here last week, but as I did not have the opportunity to address the full council, I did decide to return this week. I wanted to state how important CrossFit Kenmore is to my life and to the community. As you can see from the attendance here tonight, it is a place that attracts all age ranges and from all parts of the community, both adjacent and local. It is a place where I have achieved health and better physical fitness, and as I've had better physical fitness, I've had less medical costs, less needs to tap into other parts of health care. And it is also a place that is a strong community, and it's a family, and it would be a grave loss to Kenmore and to the local citizen population if Kenmore CrossFit was to go away. As I was here last week, I got to hear part of the conversation around the fees and the assessment of the fees. I would like to respectfully challenge the council members to relook at the fees in relative to the size of the business and the location of the business, and to reassess if the fees make sense for CrossFit Kenmore and where it is located. Thank you very much. I appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Spencer Getz.
Good evening, City Council. My name is Second Lieutenant Spencer Getz. I'm with the 2 of the 146th Field Artillery Battalion of the Army National Guard, based out of the Seattle Armory here in Washington. I'd like to touch on this evening of the ramifications that Chuck's business going out of Chuck losing his business would have on the society, both here in Kenmore and even our state as a whole. I've been an officer in the military now for going on 2 years. I've been in the military myself for over 4, and in that time, Chuck has been possibly the greatest mentor in my performance, both as a soldier and as a leader, and developing the soldiers underneath me. In my unit, when I first got there, over 50% of our soldiers, the men and women who, when crisis comes, when the floods come, when the fires come every year, you guys depend on to go fill sandbags, to go dig trench lines to stop the forest fires, they couldn't even pass a physical fitness test. Since then, through mentorship from Chuck and what he teaches me about fitness and fostering fitness from a base level, getting my soldiers enthusiastically driving after achieving greater fitness every day. The last PT test my soldiers took, a total of 64 men, only one didn't pass his PT test. That's going from half. So what I want to drive at then is the contributions that Chuck gives to our society. If you amend these laws, you are not just giving a free handout to somebody. You are empowering the community as a whole to make itself better. That's why we are asking for this. It is not because, oh, Joe Schmo just can't get enough funds together to make it happen. No, if you don't change and amend these laws, his business will go under, and my ability to better prepare my soldiers to be able to completely and fully accomplish the mission, both in state and abroad, will be diminished. And I'm sure that there are many other people here for whom that is a very personal life, who have homes over in eastern Washington that may burn to the ground, or what have you. In the end, I would just ask you that you treat a small business as a small business, not as a mega corporation that has millions of dollars stashed away that can just pop up $60,000
30
on a whim,
seconds.
but instead someone who is struggling simply to make ends meet, to provide both for his wife and his 4 beautiful children, and to provide for the community which he has helped to build. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Getz.
Lauren, is it May? Mao.
Hello, my name is Lauren Mao, 24022 26th Drive Southeast, Bothell. I've been going to CrossFit Kenmore with my family for about 3 years. I'm 13 and I've been working out for 2 years. I enjoy Olympic lifting and CrossFit. CrossFit is my sport and it's a very important part of my life. I don't know all the details of everything that's going on, but I just know that it would be a hard change for many people if CrossFit was to close. Thank you for considering my thoughts.
Thank you.
Casey.
I'm amazed at these young people. They are doing a tremendous job. Thank you very much.
I hope I say this right. Casey Hiromata? Okay, I tried.
It's always awesome to follow up a 13-year-old super athlete. So, my name is Casey Ramada. I live at 15416, 221st Avenue Northeast in Woodinville. I'm not going to waste a lot of your guys' time. I'm just going to tell you guys 2 quick stories. I spent almost 5 years in the Marine Corps. I did 3 overseas deployments. When I got out of the Marine Corps, I lived a very unhealthy lifestyle. You know, going from running every day to eating McDonald's every day. Then I discovered CrossFit, and I realized how much fun you can have throwing a heavy bar over your head. And the bar gets heavier, and it gets heavier, and it gets heavier, and that's the best time you're going to have in the sport. Along that journey, I realized I want to share my journey with other people. About 6 months ago, the gym I worked at closed, and this is when Charles comes into it. First time I met Charles, he comes up, he shakes my hand, and he says, "What are we going to do now?" I was like, "What do you mean? What are we?" Like, I didn't know there was a we in this equation. He says, "There is now." He goes, "You work for me." I said, "Awesome." Since I started working at CrossFit Kenmore, I started an adaptive athlete program where I take wounded veterans and I reinstill fitness into their lifestyle. Charles made that happen. You guys close that gym, the city of Kenmore is going to lose that program. Granted, you guys are not associated with that program, but a gym in your community is. Every day you have wounded veterans come to your community to get better, to get stronger, to manage their body pain, to get rid of their addictions. You close that gym, you lose that. So not only are you negatively affecting this community here, you're going to affect a lot of veterans coming home that need that support system. Thank you.
Santa? I apologize. Santa K?
I wrote it down, so
I didn't want to mess it up.
Hi, my name is Dr. Sonia Kotke. I live at 15416 221st Avenue Northeast, Woodinville. I'm a clinical psychologist in the state of Washington, and I work in Kirkland, and I live in Woodinville. You might think it very strange then. Well, yes, this is why you're imposing this transportation fee, that it's bringing people into the city using your roads. But this gym, CrossFit Kenmore, is actually one of the most convenient places to my work and to my home. And it's very convenient for me. There are other gyms that I could have found in Kirkland, a little bit farther away, or in Woodinville. But the reason that I chose CrossFit Kenmore when my previous gym closed was because of the community and the family atmosphere that was provided there. There's very little that is very few places like it anywhere in this area. Mr. Crouch has provided a fantastic gym with a fantastic community that everybody enjoys coming to. It also brings business to the other businesses in the community. And like I had mentioned, I'm a clinical psychologist, and I understand the benefits that exercise has on emotional and physical well-being, emotional well-being particularly. One of the first treatments that is suggested to people that go to therapy is physical exercise, getting active, getting motivated. Another thing is finding support systems, getting out there, meeting up with people, and being able to bond with other people. Both of those things are things that CrossFit Kenmore provides, and things that would be a travesty if it went away. People really enjoy CrossFit Kenmore, and it's a fantastic business for the community. And yes, it's a business, but it's more than just a business. To people, it's home, it's family, it's community. It's a way to get together and really be able to not just work out, but congregate, talk about issues, talk about the things you're looking forward to, and just like a lot of other places like a church. I know that a lot of people go to church for community and to be with other people and to feel a part of something, and that's exactly what CrossFit Kenmore does. It would be a shame if the fees being imposed were to make this go out of business. There would be a lot of very sad people, and people that would have to travel much farther, potentially through Kenmore, to find a new gym.
30 seconds.
And the benefits of exercise on emotional well-being is something that can't be measured. And I see that every day in my job. I work with the severely mentally ill, and one of the things that they really need is exercise, and I see how important it is. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Donald Taylor.
Hello, my name is Donald Taylor. I live at 418 Dayton Street, Apartment 1 over in Edmonds. And I'm a member of the CrossFit Kenmore community. Just wanted to say there's a lot of other places that I could go that are not within the drive to my work. And I choose to go to CrossFit Kenmore for the reason that there's just a great community there, has a lot of growth and a lot of potential for growth from the deep well of positivity that it has within it. And if you take the time to find an exception to your policy, I'm sure that you'll see in time that your community will grow with not just more people, but better. That's it. Thanks.
Thank you.
Bill Onstead? Okay.
My name is Bill Onstead. I live at 12709 Northeast 133rd Place in Kirkland. And I want to talk about unintended consequences. I think that collectively you guys all have a really hard job. And I think that you have a heart for your community and your city, which is why you do what you do. I don't think you do it for the paycheck. I don't think you do it because you like being here at 8 o'clock with 90 formerly sweaty people staring you down. But here's the deal. Is every action that's taken with good intent has to be measured against what it actually does. And in this case, what the TIFs do and what the sidewalk fee does is it puts a man out of business. And I don't think that's the goal. I think that the goal is to encourage business growth. And if you look at the costs imposed on small businesses, not just CrossFit Kenmore, but small businesses across the city, what you see is as costs go up, participation goes down. And the goal should be the opposite, right? The goal should be to have more business growth. Because I don't live in Kenmore, and I don't work in Kenmore, but I work out at Kenmore. And I spend thousands of dollars a year in the city of Kenmore where I wouldn't be otherwise except for CrossFit Kenmore. And so you're missing out on two vital pieces of revenue, which is one, the people who don't live here and who don't work here, who come here anyway because they've got a reason to. There's some sort of a small business that brings them into the city. And the second are the business owners who can't afford to operate in the city. And those ongoing revenues are really, I think, what you lose out on, never mind the human aspect, right? Let's just talk finances. You want the ongoing revenue, you want the revenue growth, and by stunting it on the front end, you cost yourself a lot more than you're getting on the front end. So thank you for your time.
Thank you very much.
Bill Abdallah.
Well, thank you in advance for your time. My name is Bill Abdallah. I live at 18210 Fifth Avenue Northeast in Shoreline. I, too, come to the city of Kenmore because of CrossFit Kenmore. A great deal of what I was going to say here was touched on by Chuck and by Jocelyn. So I'm going to make this short and sweet. I'm a 70-year-old grandfather of 6 grandchildren, ages 5 to 16. CrossFit Kenmore daily workouts designed to increase mobility, flexibility, and strength continue to be instrumental in enhancing my abilities to wrestle, play ball, and interact daily with my grandsons with no ill effects. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Abdullah.
Mike B. Is there a Mike B? I'm going to say Breyer. I can't read the writing. I apologize. 19003. Yeah. Sorry about that.
Hi, my name is Mike Bauer, and live at 19003 Ken Lake Place Northeast, Kenmore, Washington, 98028. Here to talk about the fee assessments levied on CrossFit Kenmore. But first, I wanted to go background on my wife and myself. We grew up in this area back into the 60s, myself on Finn Hill and her on Holmes Point Drive. So we've seen Kenmore back to when there was a blueberry field down by the slough, and I think Tradewell was the only grocery store in town, and there wasn't much else going on. Aside from that, I managed the Kenmore Safeway in 1989 to 1991 and came back and ran it from 2010 to 2015. So I've seen the local economy develop and the strategies that the city has taken to try and make it a community. You know, the highway out here has always been an issue for this town because it's, you know, it breaks things up, it divides the city, and what Kenmore CrossFit is, along with, you know, the 192 breweries and the things that we're doing on this side of the road, is an effort to bring this community together on both sides of the street. And so, you know, that alone plays a pretty important role in what we're trying to do. You know, 7 years ago, we bought a condo in Kenmore. And I would say prior to that, we probably didn't have much interest in living in Kenmore. We saw what was happening here, and after 5 years of condo life, not liking it, we bought a house here. We still live here in Kenmore. And we chose to do that because we, like I said, we like what is going on. One of the businesses is CrossFit Kenmore, as you know, and the box, as we call it at CrossFit, has pretty much changed my life from an overworked store manager to a pretty fit, retired 64-year-old. So, and with that, I need to thank Chuck, the coaches, my family for their support, along with the CrossFit community for that happening. The current assessment being placed on Kenmore CrossFit will make it very difficult to keep its doors open. I don't see how a small business can take on fees up to $150,000 and survive. It does not seem that fees are being fairly assessed. It will make the small business owner wanting to take a chance on a new business idea think twice before they come to Kenmore. These are the types of businesses we need to make Kenmore a destination. CrossFit Kenmore is a great place to be associated with. It has a quality ownership and Chuck, a great group of people to have in the community. And I think we need to reevaluate how to fairly apply the new sidewalk assessment policy so small businesses like Kenmore CrossFit can continue to stay open in our community. And I've got about 4 other bullet points to consider. You know, in that location that Kenmore CrossFit is, first of all, Kenmore CrossFit doesn't own the building. It's a lease that he has. So, you know, where the liability lies for sidewalks, it would seem that the owner would be doing that. There is a sidewalk currently in place on one side of the street.
30 seconds.
And I don't know what we're going to accomplish by putting a sidewalk on the other side. We have the Burke-Gilman Trail adjacent to the Kenmore CrossFit, which is a huge walking area. Third, the sidewalk is not going to create a more walkable space. You're going to have, like, I don't know, probably 100, 150 feet of sidewalk, then you're going to be back in the dirt, or you're going to be walking in front of 192 Brewery. And fourthly, the CrossFit customers really do not use the sidewalk.
Mayor,
we
we're
drive
at
into
3
the
minutes.
facility and we leave. So sidewalk would be no benefit in that area. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bowen.
Jennifer Anderson.
So if you please do your best to try to hold it to 3 minutes. You guys get to go home in a few minutes, and we still got a lot of work to do. So thank you.
Mr. Mayor, members of council, city council, thank you for letting us speak today and giving us your time. I just wanted to take
Your name, please?
I'm sorry, Jennifer Anderson. I live here in Kenmore, just up by Inglemore High School. I did a little bit of research today on the history of the traffic impact fee, and I came across a temporary ordinance that actually just got eliminated this past December that I kind of wanted to bring up and talk with you guys about, because that temporary ordinance eliminated the impact fee and parking requirements for certain businesses for 18 months through last December. And so it seems like you already have a little bit of precedence for providing either a waiver to that fee or relief to small businesses, including the one like CrossFit Kenmore. In that temporary ordinance, the city cited economic development as an important issue and stated a desire to promote the retention of existing businesses and the creation of new businesses, as well as to actively support the expansion of your local economic base and to use zoning, regulation, and incentives that will result in an inviting and vital central core that is self-sustaining. CrossFit Kenmore is exactly the type of business the city should seek to support and retain. CrossFit Kenmore encourages active and healthy lifestyles and is actively involved in its community. It's one of only a handful of fitness gyms and studios in the city itself. And so I think you can tell by the support in this room how important this business is to not only the residents of Kenmore, but the surrounding areas. And so again, I thank you for your time, and I hope you will look at that previous temporary ordinance and maybe take some things from that, as well as the language Chuck has provided from Shoreline, and consider how those impact fees affect your small businesses. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Anderson.
Elizabeth Lapine.
Good evening. I'm Elizabeth Lapine. I live at 7638 Northeast 196th Street here in Kenmore. A lot of the things I was going to say has already been stated, so I'll be super quick. I moved here about a little over a year and a half ago from New York City, and my husband and I lived there for 12 years, and I was going to be an at-home mom for the first time in my life. So moving here, I was the most worried about not finding a community in my small New York subset of where I lived. I would go to my bakery, I would go to my workout, I would go to everything close to me. And even though it was New York City with a huge, obviously, footprint, I really tried to stay close to my small community and support those companies. So moving here, it's what I wanted to do. I try to, as much as possible, try to find a community and support local businesses. So when I moved here, I found Kenmore CrossFit, and it was a place I can bring my 2 little girls. I have a 5-year-old and a 3-year-old. I live about a mile up on nice days. I even run there, so with my stroller. So the traffic ordinance fee, for me personally, isn't. I don't drive as much as. Especially on the nice days, although when it's pouring, yes, I definitely drive there. But I was really looking for a community, not only where I can work out, because I literally can work out anywhere, but I truly found that in this group and with Chuck and his family. And not only that, I kind of use that community to find out what else is available to me in Kenmore. So I've just painted my house. I'm looking for someone to build a deck for me, and I'm really trying to reach out and use the resources here in Kenmore instead of trying to go outside of Kenmore, which is very easy for me to do. So everything else was pretty much said, but I appreciate for you guys to listen to us, and thank you kindly.
Thank you, Ms. Levine.
Molly Burdine.
Good evening. My name is Molly Burdine, 16400 Inglewood Road Northeast. I will be very brief, as Elizabeth touched on some of the topics. I wanted to let you know, from the mom perspective, as a woman as well, the incredible opportunity that Kenmore CrossFit has given me. And that opportunity is one of empowerment. Chuck has, in the gym, allowed us to bring our children in, have our children right next to us, and watch us as we say, we can't do it. We can't. Absolutely not. That's too much. And then we do it. And that is immeasurable. And we do it almost daily. We have 3 kids over here that can testify to that. They see us all the time working as hard as we possibly can in the face of thinking we absolutely can't. And what an incredible example to be giving our children in our community. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Burdine.
Renee Holderman.
Good evening. My name is Renee Holderman. I live at 16023 84th Avenue Northeast, Kenmore. I've been going to CrossFit Kenmore for almost 2 years. It's something I never thought I would actually ever do. And even Chuck, I think, was doubtful in the first month that I would continue. But it's changed my life. And not only by being most physically fit that I've been all my life, also giving me an amazing community. The people that work out at this gym are incredible, and they never stop. They always share of themselves. And it's just that type of environment, I think, that we want to encourage in Kenmore. People always ask where I go to work out, and a lot of people, I work at Third Place Books in the Children's Book Buyer, and a lot of the people here come and visit me at the bookstore, and it's just a continuing community that you're always seeing, and I think it's priceless, and if it went away, I'd be devastated. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Holderman.
Okay, I'm going to try on this one. Karin Blodowski? Okay.
So my name's Karen Mladneski. I live at, you were close, right? 6261 Northeast 184th Street, just a few blocks from here. And one of the things about CrossFit Kenmore is, for me, is that it's a place I can get to without having to drive. So I actually run there no matter what the weather, sleet, snow, rain, right? I run there, and I'm not the only one. Other people do too. It's on the Burt Gilman Trail, so it's very convenient and safe way for me to get there. And I try to do as much as possible within my own community locally. So it was one of the reasons that my husband and I chose to move to Kenmore was that I could, from our house, walk to the store. I could walk to the post office. I can walk to CrossFit. And so CrossFit is a hugely important part of my life. I started a year ago, and it's just transformed me health-wise in so many ways. And I just feel
the same way I think most of you do, that it's a fantastic community. We all support each other, and I think it's a really important part of Kenmore, and I would hate to see it go. So, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Wadneski.
Greg Kruger.
Hi, my name is Greg Kruger. I live at 19128 112th Avenue Northeast in Bothell. In advance, thank you very much for your time. I think the community aspect of what we see here is well-founded. And I'm going to get emotional when I say this, so I'm just going to apologize for that in advance. CrossFit Kenmore has given me a place to rise above and give back to the community in another way. My daughter is a frequent flyer at Children's Hospital, has been for over 10 years. And one of the things that she has is a disability that requires a great amount of medical attention beyond even a remote amount of funds that I can come up with. And that's supported by a place called the, I'm trying to blank on all of a sudden, unsolicited funds that is given through guilds through Children's Hospital, though. And through CrossFit Kenmore, we have the ability to create fundraisers and give back to places that has one of the most incredible children's hospitals in the world, and certainly the United States. And without that, my ability to give back to places like Children's Hospital is not available. And Chuck has provided this platform for me to give back to a place that has given my daughter life. So thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Kruger.
Christina Jenkins.
Hi, my name is Christina Jenkins. I live at 8827 Northeast 144th Street in Kirkland, Washington. And really, it's kind of been touched on, so I'm going to make it real quick. The only reason I come to Kenmore is for the gym. And, well, because of the gym, I now shop in Kenmore for my family of 6. I frequent the restaurants here, all around my gym schedule. So if the gym wasn't here, then I wouldn't be supporting the local businesses here. And actually, we're looking into moving here. So if the gym's not here, we're not going to be here. So I hope that you will reconsider your fees, and they'll be able to stay. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Jenkins.
Jacob Packley.
Hi, my name is Jacob Packley. I live at 11701 121st Street, Southeast Everett, Washington, 98208. I recently moved here at the beginning of September, chasing that beautiful woman over there. And coming here, I had no job set up, no friends, and Chuck has provided me a community where I can socialize, as well as during my time searching for a job that was very discouraging. It provided me structure, and working out, releasing endorphins has allowed me to get through the difficult times of finding a job. And that is what CrossFit has done for me. And we wouldn't be driving from Everett every day back and forth if this wasn't a great place. So, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Shackley.
Rudy Gothenquist. Did I say that right?
Yes, thank
Okay.
you.
Yeah.
My name is Rudy Gothenquist, and I live at 15610 92nd Court, Northeast Bothell, just right by Inglemore High School. And, I'm a community coach. I coach AAU and rec girls basketball. And fortunately, I'm built kind of like a long-distance runner, so I've had a lot of injuries. And I've always struggled with the ability to maintain my strength through the season. And coming to Kenmore CrossFit has really, you hear it a lot, but it has changed my life. And I really appreciate you guys giving this a second thought, because the people here give a lot back to the community. I coach soccer, I coach basketball. The girls that I work with are playing right now for Inglemore High School, and I just got to say I appreciate the gym, and I know that after tonight, after listening to everybody, you'll appreciate what the gym does for your community here, and I just thanks.
Mayor, there's nobody else signed up.
Anybody else? Anybody else wishing to be heard? Thank you, you guys, very much. I really, and I know the council shares the opinion that the young people here that expressed themselves tonight, I mean, just outstanding. You guys did a great job. Your parents should be proud of you. Thank you all for your comments. We certainly will take this under advisement. Like I said, it's not on the agenda tonight, but it will be noticed when it is, so that you want to come back and hear the discussion, you certainly can. So, Mr. City Manager.
Thank you, Your Honor. So one of the citizens that spoke mentioned an ordinance that expired at the end of last year, and that ordinance exempts businesses in existing buildings in that part of the city from parking requirements and impact fees. And Mr. Crouch actually applied for his change in use before that ordinance expired. So he actually does qualify for the impact fee exemption and also parking requirements exemption. So I think it's down to the sidewalk issue and whether he needs to construct the sidewalks as a result of the change in use. One thing that can be done is the applicant can have a separate analysis done, what they call a trip analysis, to see if the sidewalk is needed. Without that analysis, our civil engineer that does review on these types of projects, he has to just look at the table in the code. That's what he has to refer to without that type of analysis done. There is a possibility if the trip analysis is done, then he may not have to construct the sidewalk. But this ordinance that expired at the end of this year, you as a council have obviously talked about resurrecting it again and further reducing the in lieu of fee even more. An option you can consider is adding the ability to exempt the sidewalk requirement in addition to exempting the parking and the impact fees. I checked with our city attorney. You definitely have the authority to do that. Note that an ordinance like this doesn't get passed overnight. We're required to go through what they call a SEPA process and a review by the Washington State Department of Commerce, and that takes a couple of months. So it'll be a couple of months before an ordinance like this is brought before you. In the meantime, the city isn't going to do anything to prevent Mr. Crouch from operating his business. So we can kind of be in a holding pattern until you're willing to consider that ordinance in a couple of months.
So, that's the gentleman that runs the city. So,
no, it's not.
You heard that straight from him. With that, we're gonna take a couple of minutes and let you folks go home and us go take care of some needs, and we'll stand adjourned for a few minutes. Thank you, folks. We're back on? Okay. So, oh my goodness. See, now you're cutting into my medicine taking time. Do I need semaphores or some other sort of... You can hear me fine down there?
Yeah. Are we ready?
We're ready. Let's go.
Excellent. Okay. Good evening, Council. Shifting gears somewhat, we're now going to be talking about the housing strategy. And so we're hoping tonight that you are ready to take action on the housing strategy plan, to adopt that. You've heard the Planning Commission recommendations, and they kind of gave some priorities of what they think the next work program items would be. The last council meeting where we were talking about this topic, we were talking about direct funding assistance strategies, and we also have a recommendation about priorities for working on those for this year. So that's really what we're looking for this evening. And again, just to sort of reiterate, and I'm sure you'll hear this again, when you select the work program items for work by the Planning Commission and the Council, that is when we will really be getting into the meat of the discussion and addressing a lot of questions. So I understand that you might have a lot of pent-up questions, and you will have ample opportunity to work through all those questions once you've selected the work program items. So I think, not to say we can't answer your questions tonight, but just to kind of reassure you that there will be opportunity as these items move forward. So that's all I have to say, and I'm going to now turn it over to Laurie, who's going to kind of give an overview of where we're trying to get to this evening.
Good evening. So tonight, as Debbie mentioned, is the third opportunity for the Council to look at the housing strategy plan. As you know, the plan is an implementation measure of the housing element of the comprehensive plan. And the purpose of the strategy plan is to set out a housing work program. So it's not to decide, yes, we want to do this, or no, we don't want to do this. It's really to set out a work program to study some issues that we think may be useful. And as we previously described, the strategy prioritization does not mean that a higher priority strategy ultimately will be adopted. All that it means is that the strategy is intriguing as a possible means to address affordable housing in Kenmore, or it's a timely strategy that perhaps should be considered more in the near future rather than a couple of years out, because there's a time relationship. The decision about whether or not a strategy should be put in place would come in the future, as Debbie mentioned, after more in-depth research, robust public input, and further discussion. So there are 4 goals for tonight's meeting. The first goal is to prioritize the 5 direct assistance strategies and determine which of those strategies, if any, the Council wants to add to the Council work program for this year. The second goal is to determine whether the 4 top strategies identified by the Planning Commission are appropriate, given the long list of possible strategies. Then the third goal, once you've settled on the priorities, would be to adopt the overall housing strategy plan, and lastly, determine which one of the prioritized land use related strategies should be assigned to the Planning Commission. Staff has taken a stab at looking at recommendations for both the direct assistance strategies and the land use related strategies. And those are in attachments 1 and 2 of your packet. So attachment 1 shows the direct assistance strategies, and in yellow are the strategies that staff is recommending be given the highest priority. In attachment 2, those are the Planning Commission strategies, and staff, again, of the 4 top strategies recommended by the Planning Commission, we've suggested that one rise to the top and be assigned to the Planning Commission for this year. As you recall, when we did the docket, we left a placeholder for a strategy from the Housing Strategy Plan for the Planning Commission to take up. So I'm going to go ahead. I'll call up these attachments. I'm sure you have them in front of you. But these are the direct assistance strategies. And I'm going to just touch briefly on the yellow highlighted ones. Again, these are the staff recommended highest priority strategies, and I'll tell you a little bit why for each one. So the first one is to provide local funding assistance for affordable housing. So the city, in conjunction with the Arch Executive Board, is going to begin discussions this fall going into 2018 about direct funding assistance. So this seemed like something that was kind of already on the work program and something that was timely. So we were recommending that as one of the top strategies. The second one is to explore ways to utilize existing and or new funding programs to address local conditions, such as targeting preservation and rehabilitation of existing manufactured and multifamily housing and or displacement funding. Staff is recommending this strategy perhaps be considered as a higher priority because it matches up well with what we are recommending is the top Planning Commission strategy, which is to look at preserving existing affordable housing. And then the last recommendation in terms of priority is to support development of emergency and permanent housing with services for homeless individuals and households. And this one we felt was timely, particularly because of the recent discussions about the Mary's Place project. So again, it doesn't mean that any of these things would be done or accomplished or put in place. It's just saying, let's study these because we think they have potential and or we think they're a timely strategy. Is that a question?
No.
Oh, okay. All right, so the next set of strategies, attachment.
Councilmember Sperry.
Oh.
I'm just wondering if, because we have 4 different things, if perhaps we could see if there is any consensus on each item before you move to the next.
Sure.
So were you, because this is the first one, right, that you were talking about, the
These-
5 direct.
Yikes. Sorry.
I thought we got rid of that.
Right. So one of your goals, we were hoping, was that you could settle on your top priorities for the direct assistance strategies. And, and again, this is the yellow highlight of staff recommendation.
If I may. So, Mr. Mayor, what would you think of taking these one at a time, these 4
That's
different
fine.
things? So just as a comment, I think that this highlighted what the staff recommendations seem to be very aligned with what we've been looking to do, and also things that are timely in terms of for further discussion.
Councilmember Curtis.
So I had a comment on the B small I, supporting the manufactured housing. And I understand at this point your question is, do we want to go study it? But one of the questions I would like addressed as we go study that, because I think we should, is how will we support some locations but not all locations? So I wouldn't, as a policy, want to say we will automatically support all of those locations, either to keep them up in any kind of a direct support way, or prevent them from developing in a more in a way that would benefit our city more. So there are some that are located right next door that I think would have a different purpose in our overall downtown development plan than some in other areas. So somehow whatever we decide has to be able to distinguish that, that we will make decisions that are not necessarily going to treat everybody, every location the same, because their priorities aren't the same importance to the city. Yeah, I think that's the main thing I just want to make sure we can include in that discussion.
So I guess I'm a little bit confused here on preserving when that's privately owned property that they can sell at any time they want. I mean, how do we...
I think we would be looking at different approaches. There are different approaches to preserving, and part of them are land use strategies, which is something that the Planning Commission was interested in looking at. This particular direct assistance approach would be to look at something like displacement funding, or are there other financial options that might help with this topic?
That part I get.
Yeah.
It's the part that this property has been zoned such and probably has been planned upon as being able to do something on that property and saved until such a time as they saw fit to sell it.
So I think that
interfering with that use halfway down, halfway along the process is interesting.
Well, I think, it would be recognizing that you first of all have to figure out what's out there. So you have to look at what the affordable housing is in that for manufactured housing, what population it's serving, and then, like you say, you'd have to look at is it a priority to keep, and if so, what are those priorities, and is there a way to kind of work with the current owner and have some sort of mutual benefit? I mean, there might be some mutual benefit of working with them to preserve that. I don't know. This is something, though, you would get into a lot of discussion as you move into this topic, whether it's land use or the direct assistance approach.
Right, but if we're going to put this high, then, if I was a property owner and I had some rental, let's say, some low-income rental, but I knew all along that when I reached a certain age, I was going to sell it because I needed retirement money. And then to have the city come in and say, well, you can't do that anymore because the land use has changed.
If I could
Arthur, yes.
The way you described it sounds exactly like what we were doing with private owners who have federally assisted, who had contracts for 15 years. And we didn't use land use tools. We used direct acquisition. Went to the owners who had exactly
Okay.
the intent you said and managed that as the 500 units have only 30 converted to market rate.
Okay.
Voluntary transactions that were supported through public funding. And in Redmond, there was the preservation of that in one case there was a private manufactured community that was about to be converted to another use, but we worked with someone who came in and bought the property from the owner for a transaction that was mutually acceptable.
Fine. That's the answer I was looking for. Councilmember Smith.
I actually like the fact that it's accelerated on here, and I do because, one, I do think by having this be a topic for the Planning Commission, it doesn't mean we have to accept or do or proceed with anything, but I think it is one of these items that is probably more vulnerable to unforeseen consequences based on market conditions. So I actually like the idea that we can at least talk about the issue. Where we go with it, I don't really know. I actually agree with a lot of your concerns, but I do think it's worth having it high on the priority list.
No, I just wanted a little clarification. Thank you. Councilmember Danuski.
Hey. So, yeah, I'm in line with this, but I'll have to admit that since I don't know the nitty-gritties, I guess I could kind of have a question with Arthur. Are we missing any obvious things by going on with these choices? Is there something that we should really, really be doing on this list that's not highlighted?
I think what I would comment on is if you look in the staff memo, especially when you look at Section B, specializing, the Arts Trust Fund is all about doing where there is opportunity, and there isn't, I think, anything. Well, home repair is something that's already funded through another program and has been for a long time, but all of these that are listed here are things that we would embrace doing because we know they address local needs, but at times, as I just mentioned, there were certain needs that we said, this is really important, so how can we try to ooch our system that needs to be responsive? So I don't see any, you have a full list here of different ideas. I don't think anything's missing. And the trust fund will continue to be open to other ideas. It's not like we're saying by prioritizing these, that's all we're going to do. But what this is saying is, are we going to spend extra energy because these are particularly important to see if we can't help catalyze in some way, some ways to catalyze it so that these particular needs are being addressed in your community. And I think from being in the table I've been at for the last year with your commission and you, I think these are ones that are front and center at this moment, but it doesn't mean the others are going away because if you were to prioritize those.
Okay, thanks.
Councilmember Hervig.
So I've been looking through this, and I'm trying to see if maybe I missed something here. But I know last time we spoke, there was a lot of talk about looking at income discrimination or source of income discrimination. I don't see that mentioned in any of these documents here. Staff decided we're not talking about that, or is that someplace else?
That is listed and is included as lower priority, and if
It's in the matrix. I just was trying to figure out, and that
right.
matrix.
So if you wanted to elevate that issue, I think that's a council, conversation by the council.
Okay.
But it is in the overall matrix. It wasn't prioritized by the commission. So if you want to change some of that, that's why we bring the plan to you.
Oh, yeah. I appreciate that. And is that something that staff would see going to the planning commission, or is that something that we would just work on at the council level?
I would think that it's more of a council. I mean, at this point, it's a council level, whether or not you would want the commission to help in some of that research if you did, whenever that becomes a work program item. I think I'm not sure how much that's a land use, which is what the commission typically does, versus more fair housing. It might be a little, who should be lead on that might be a little bit different than a typical land use action.
No, thank you. That makes sense.
Anybody else? Councilmember Smith?
I have a question on C, the review of permit and impact fees for affordable housing. And my question is, can you refresh me on, it says the city has previously addressed impact fee reductions for affordable housing, but I don't recall what specifically we did on those development permit fees to reduce them.
Right. There's an impact fee reduction authorized in the ordinance that will allow a lower income unit to be exempted from the impact fee charge. And I know we've done that. Arthur may want to speak to that. But
if you look at in attachment 4, where we were summarizing the efforts by the city, you'll see that there is a figure in there of fee waivers of, I believe, 98. No, that's not the right number. I'm on the wrong section. 155,000, and that was for several different projects. A couple were the projects done by Lehigh, and then there were some fee waivers on some of the units, on a few of the units across the street. So that policy is in place in your codes, and it has been used on a few projects over the years.
So was that then for specifically the development permit fees, it says, or does that also include the impact fees?
It's for the impact fees.
Okay. So, so when you say staff recommends that it become a monitoring item, so it's not going away or anything, so you're just saying, don't touch it right now, we already have something in place, basically, that we can live with. Okay, thank you.
But the monitor and see if there's comments or things change, or, for example, the state law changed, but I believe you've updated based on that already, so that's what we sort of mean by monitor.
Okay,
Make
thank
sure
you.
it seems like it's working.
So, on the direct assistance part, can we use general funds to, I guess we can for affordable housing. I'm reading it wrong, so yeah, never mind. No, I was thinking of something else. All right, any other questions? So, are we in agreement then on these priorities that staff has outlined?
Yes.
Great.
Okay, so that's
Do you want them ranked? Is that what you want? Do you want us to change the ranking that you have, or you're happy with the way you've got it outlined for this first part?
If you're comfortable with those 3 priorities, as I mentioned, the first one, local funding assistance for affordable housing, that project is already scheduled. It would be starting in the fall. It would be a question of whether you wanted, I would recommend probably with the funding programs related to the mobile home park, for example, that might be a case where you'd want to wait until the Planning Commission kind of got caught up with land use issues. And then if, in fact, you prioritize C, there may be some conversations that would happen sooner rather than later about the Mary's Place project, I suppose. If you don't want to target any of those for this year, you don't have to. But I know at least A will be starting in the fall.
We in agreement? I'm seeing nobody nodding no.
Ask one more question, if you don't
Absolutely.
mind. On the very first thing on A1, it says to continue or expand use of general funds. Is that specifically, is that inclusive of every possible funding program that we could use for affordable housing, or is that more, are we looking at that as an item for like ARCH funding primarily? Or I'm just wondering on the A1, if you can tell me, is there any more specific on that?
I think that this one particularly was targeted toward the Housing Trust Fund and the ARCH issue. But certainly there are other discussions about other funding sources. Those appear in the full matrix. They were given a lower priority, and this one was given a higher priority because of the timing.
Sure. Okay.
Maybe a little clarification given how you asked the question.
Yeah.
Parity isn't about the ARCH Trust Fund by itself. It's about cities providing direct assistance for affordable housing. And in the chart that we gave you, you'll see that there's CDBG and there's general fund and then there's others. And there have been several cases in which cities have donated land, so it's going to be in their town. The city council has had a lot of influence on exactly what happens. The city decides who gets the site, not ARCH. But the whole purpose of ARCH was cities saying, we get it on direct assistance, it's complex, et cetera. And one of the primary ways we can get resources out in the community is working together through the ARCH Trust Fund. But parity is about all resources you make available for affordable housing that directly benefit affordable housing. So your impact fee waivers show up as well. That didn't go through ARCH, but it still shows up in the information when we're talking about parity, which is talked about through ARCH, but cities have made those resources available in different ways.
Okay, thanks. I appreciate the clarification. And I do have a question on one of the charts that had the per capita for the different cities, and it was a comparison, and I could pull it up, but I just remember I had one question. Was there a specific reason that Bothell wasn't on there on the most recent year? I was looking on there to see it, and they have a number of other cities, and I know Bothell has contributed to ARCH, but I was wondering why it wasn't there.
So Bothell has not contributed general funds until this year. Bothell, how do I keep this really short? For a number of years, the first few years, a number of cities only made CDBG funds available, which are Community Development Block Grant, because back in the day, the county essentially gave cities CDBG funds for them to decide how to use. It doesn't work quite the same way now. Bothell used to give us a lot of CDBG funds, and that's the main way they got direct assistance. They also gave us a discount on a site a long time ago. When CDBG changed, et cetera, and when we did parity, a lot of cities also then went to general funds. Bothell did not until this year, and that's just what they did. So that's why they don't show up. They are now putting some general fund dollars in as well.
Okay, I appreciate the explanation, and it just helps just understanding the whole context of how this all fits together. So I appreciate
and that's where we have Councilmember Herbig has come to a couple of meetings with council representatives, so it's not just the ARCH Executive Board who's talking about this. We have been involving council representatives from cities, and we are sending out invites in the next couple of weeks to do something in the next couple months. So this is involving the various councils, and when we come back to the full councils, there'll be more background on how parity works, the history, and things like that we'll bring as well.
Thank you.
Councilmember Curtis?
I did have one other kind of high-level comment like that. If we as a council decide we want to give more money in direct assistance, I would prefer to use it through ARCH rather than us learning all the details of every single way we can do direct assistance. To me, it seems like they have well-thought-out programs. They work well with other people. They maximize that return by combining it with other entities in ways that we wouldn't be able to do as a city. So I think it's a policy statement, whether we as a council want to contribute more money directly for affordable housing, and if we do, I would tend to more of it just go that direction.
Councilmember Herbig.
So this is kind of a question for Debbie, I think, with how we're kind of structuring the conversation right now. So I assume that when the mayor said, or, you know, is everybody good, we're talking about just the direct assistance page that we're looking at right now, and then we're moving on to other pieces. The next piece we're talking about, though, is what we're giving to the Planning Commission. Is that correct?
Right. So this is one component of the housing strategy, which is the direct assistance. So it seems that from what I've heard when the mayor has asked, is everybody on board, is that you are agreeing with the staff recommendation that these will be part of your work program.
Yes, and as far as the direct assistance piece goes, I think this makes a lot of sense. My question is, where would be the appropriate place for us to discuss regulatory measures? Because that doesn't, we're talking about this, we're talking about what we're going to send to the Planning Commission. But
right. So that piece is coming on next. So we just for kind of ease of discussion, we divided it into direct assistance, and then the next item then you would be looking at the Planning Commission recommendation, if you agree with that recommendation, and identifying a top priority, or if there are some other ones that you want to move further to the top.
Okay, thank you.
So I realize that I'm probably strange, but I have woken up at night thinking about B, the first two ones, because that, you know, that's can be very distressing, and that is something that's going to be looked at relatively quickly, right? The potential displacement and what we're going to perhaps do or not do.
So I think that there are two components. This is the direct assistance approach related to that topic, and then the Planning Commission work program is also, from a land use perspective, is looking at the manufactured homes. So it would be sort of looking at that together. And so the question then would be the timing for how we lay that out. So we haven't really laid out a detailed schedule yet about when that will go to the Planning Commission and the Council, but we understand that it's a timely topic, so that's likely one of the first things that we would be looking at this year.
Thank you. All right, I think we can move to the next one.
Okay, so that was the first goal accomplished. Prioritizing those direct assistance strategies. Now we're going to look at the Planning Commission recommendation. As I mentioned, this is attachment 2 in your packet. So the Planning Commission took a wealth of strategies, and those are in the great big, it's attachment 4, I believe. There's a whole list of possible strategies, and the Planning Commission ranked those into different tiers, and the top 4 tiers, they felt the top 4 in terms of priority are listed on attachment 2. Again, allow flexible reuse of tax-exempt or publicly owned sites, consider expanding density bonuses, consider strategies for preserving existing affordable housing, and accessory dwelling units. So staff has gone a step farther, and they have taken their top 4, and then staff is making the recommendation in yellow that considering strategies for preserving existing affordable housing, which includes density transfers and the manufactured housing considerations be the top priority. So that is actually the strategy that staff would recommend you assign to the Planning Commission for this year. It would be toward the end of the year. They're doing the neighborhood business project next, but it would come up toward the end of the year. So there are 2 decision points here. First of all, do you like these top 4 that the Planning Commission is recommending, or do you want to go back and look at others that were in the larger matrix of strategies? And then inside of that, of these top 4, do you concur that this would be the top priority for the Planning Commission this year?
See, I guess that to review the second one, right? Consider expanding density bonuses and adding density transfers and other methods. And it's encouraging layering of local incentives to create a greater affordability. So, I mean, that's where my desires lie. Councilmember Curtis.
I think I'm still confused. So out of these four, if we pick the staff recommended highlighted one, do the others get addressed only just later?
Correct.
Because I'm particularly interested in the accessory dwelling unit issue, but
Right.
as long as it doesn't fall off,
Yeah.
I'm okay with the highlighted one being first.
So nothing falls off the strategy plan. And so next year, for example, when the docket and the work program came up, we would revisit the strategy plan, and conditions may have changed. And although the Planning Commission has identified priorities, Tier 1, Tier 2, and Tier 3 priorities, conditions change, and maybe another one will rise to the top. Or if not, maybe one of these other top four will be appropriate for next year's docket. So nothing falls off the strategy plan unless it's kind of been tackled or unless it's no longer even relevant.
All right, thank you.
Councilmember Smith and Councilmember Sperry.
I also, I put a pretty high priority on the accessory dwelling units, and part of it is because I think it's the only thing that we really deal with in this that really deals with affordable housing outside of the business core, and it really can impact, I think, a lot of our residents in ways that all these, most people, they don't understand density transfers and what overlays are from manufactured housing parks, and they don't need to. But I think this is kind of a thing I like about the ADUs is it really it addresses the issue in areas where there actually is space and there is more room for growth and stuff, and in addressing the affordable housing. And also, that's one of the few areas that addresses it on both sides of the equation, both from the owner and the tenant.
Councilmember Sperry.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So the highlighted one, I actually have a couple questions. So density transfers from affordable properties to areas where additional density has been proposed. So how does that different from the bullet point right before it where it talks about, again, density bonuses?
Right. This is really targeted toward preservation of existing affordable housing. So, for example, if you had an older, and I know Arthur's going to jump in here if I say the wrong thing, but if you had an older multifamily project, for example, that was affordable, but there was the density on that property was such that it is maybe making it possible to redevelop, and you would then lose that existing development. You could allow that person who owned that property to sell those development rights, basically, that density, and transfer it to another place, maybe where the TOD is, or anyway, somewhere else in the city where it might be appropriate for higher density. That way you keep the density, you don't lose the density, but you preserve the existing affordable housing. On the other hand, the bullet point right before that is a case where on a piece of property you're just saying you can do more density in exchange for perhaps an affordable housing requirement or something like that.
Are there any examples? I know this is probably more detailed than you're looking for in this night, but is there examples of where this has been successfully applied in cities around Seattle, or is this a new thing? I know in New York they were selling the airspace above the buildings, so we're getting there.
It's the same idea.
Mm-hmm.
It's essentially the same idea.
Interesting.
I think that Seattle has it in some areas that it was more to keep low buildings low and sort of how to balance out development. I know it has been used in some places for affordable housing. I don't have it off the top of my head, but I know over the years I've heard of that tool being used. And so not heavily used, no, but it's been a concept out there.
And so, thank you. And for the second part of the highlighted, the manufactured housing community overlay, again, you've got Bothell as the example. So what exactly would would this, I'm assuming this is Planning Commission work. What exactly would the task be? What would be looked at?
So I think what we would do is we would explore options, a wealth of options, whatever might be out there that talks about new and promising strategies for preserving existing affordable housing. Because I think we've discussed in the past that by tearing down existing affordable housing, we'll probably never accomplish as much affordable housing as we would with the existing development. So these were examples. This manufactured housing community overlay is something that has been used in Bothell. So that would be one thing we would look at, but we certainly would look at other types of approaches from different places around the country. We'd discuss it, have a public involvement program, and then come to a the Planning Commission would come to a recommendation about whether they thought it did or didn't work for Kenmore. That's kind of what the process would be.
Thank you.
Councilmember Danuski?
So I think Lori just answered my question. Is these are two sub-bullets in that category of preserving, but we're going to look at many other things as well.
Correct.
Okay. So I guess I'm inclined to go with that recommendation. ADUs were really high on my list too, but I guess I'd lean for the preserving just because once it's gone, it's gone. So that does seem pretty high priority.
Councilmember Herbig?
I generally think that these are good. As I said when the Planning Commission came and spoke, I think the only outside group that kind of came and worked with them, other than Arch, which isn't really an outside group, was the Rental Housing Association that has their very particular bias. And they pushed heavily against, including things like source of income discrimination, and having the city look at that. And because of that, it sounded like the Planning Commission recommended against that and didn't include that as a high priority. It's a tier 3 here on the matrix. I think with the way housing prices are going right now, with the way rents are increasing, I don't think it's fair for folks to have to justify or have to defend where their income is coming from. If they can pay the rent, they can pay the rent. A couple of months back, not a couple months back, recently, the City Council passed a resolution saying that we don't discriminate, and yet here we are. If we move forward without adding in income discrimination, here we'll be saying, but landlords can discriminate. I think we're better than that. I think it's something that we should at least be looking at and discuss further with other stakeholders beyond just the Rental Housing Association. So I would encourage strongly that we add that one, move it higher on the list, and have a discussion about that sooner rather than later.
Deputy Mayor?
First, I'm assuming that manufactured housing is equivalent to mobile home parks, that kind of housing, because there are manufactured houses that are set on foundations in neighborhoods. You're not talking about those kinds of manufactured housing.
We are referring primarily to the communities.
Okay.
Right.
And I don't want to lose sight of Councilmember Curtis's comments about the preserving the mobile home parks or the manufactured housing areas and not having a blanket policy that affects them all. There are some that are very well maintained and are worth preserving, and others that are more run down and maybe not worth preserving. My question the last time we discussed this was what happens to these people, these residents of Kenmore that are living in manufactured housing that is really affordable. And no matter how many grants you have and how much you subsidize new construction, it's not likely to be as affordable as what they've got now. And where do these people go? And how do we take care of their needs? If their mobile home park, their manufactured housing site gets redeveloped, no matter how much affordable housing you put on it, they may not be able to afford it. How are we addressing that, those members of our community, or are we?
That's
sounds like a vote for the priority to look at this, both from the preservation of the park and/or relocation. That's what it sounds like you're saying.
I'm asking a question. I'm not saying anything.
So I think what we're saying is that would be, if you take the priorities as drafted, both of those would be looked at for options. Right now, there's very limited. There is some state law about process if a developer wants to change use of a community. And so there are limitations there. So we would be exploring if there's more that can be done through city elected options. And that may be on the city's back to help with those. There's limitations under state legislation in terms of how much the park owner can be required to do versus what the city community can try to do.
I guess my comments are twofold. One, that all manufactured housing properties are not the same.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Some are more worth preserving and enhancing than others. And to treat them all with the same, paint them all with the same brush, I don't think we want to do, just as Councilmember Curtis suggested in the beginning. But then those that we are not preserving, what do we do with the residents that are living in this very affordable housing?
Right. And so
is there anything that would come online to replace that would be just as affordable? Is there any way?
And that's what we'll be looking, that's part of what the priority is telling us to look at.
Thank you.
Councilmember Curtis and Councilmember Herbig.
So one question, one comment. So the accessory dwelling units, what priority level did that end up? Because it sounded like three of us were interested in that.
It's one of the top 4. These were the highest priorities from the Planning Commission, from that whole list.
Right.
These were the top 4. I think that the staff recommendation was looking kind of at this timely issue of existing affordable housing. Accessory dwelling units, we already have rules in place to allow accessory dwelling units both inside the home or detached accessory dwelling units. There's certainly some tweaks that could be done with those rules.
So is the issue staff time and planning commission time if we added that to the work list?
Right. So there's, yes. So these are all high. Remember, this is not a 6-month priority. This is several years, and what I think staff is saying is, especially there. The other thing I would add about ADUs is I suspect every city will be prioritizing that as they do these plans. So far they are. And if they do, it's sometimes more than just about your rules on your books. It may be about utilities and how you deal with utilities. It may be about awareness of the community. And about 10 years ago, probably longer now, the communities all got together, and there's a whole section of our website that's an education piece for people across East King County, well, anywhere, but in particularly in East King County about what would it take to do an accessory dwelling unit. And that was something the cities all did together because the information could be commonly used. So I think 2 reasons for the ADUs not being number 1 is because of the priority of what is being prioritized. 2, you have something on the books, as was mentioned, but there may also be opportunity to work on this issue collectively with some other cities to deal with some of these more indirect related that might relate to ADUs, as well as just sort of the straightforward zoning question.
Okay. That answered that one. Then the comment is the manufactured housing community overlay. So my early city formation was in the Planning Commission, and I think we hated overlays because we were trying to simplify all of our zoning codes. So I have this evil feeling when somebody says the word overlay, and I'm sure that's some misperception on my part. But I guess if there's another way to help certain manufactured housing without doing an overlay, it just feels like a permanent thing that I can't go back and change, and I don't know I necessarily want to do something like almost forever. I want more flexibility. Does overlays give me flexibility or not?
Depends how you adopt it, to be perfectly honest. So I think when we're looking at this, again, as it was mentioned, this is just one tool. It's not saying this will be the tool. It's one thing to take a look at. Whether it will result in an overlay being the best approach for Kenmore is to be determined, but I recognize your concern about overlays.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Herbig.
I just want to say I'm a little concerned around the discussion that folks are having about deciding which which trailer parks may be worth saving and which ones might not be. It seems suggested that the ones closest to City Hall might not be worth saving or worth or giving them the same consideration as others. And I would point out that those are probably the most affordable that we have in the city, and probably the most, I mean, it's a big reason why I think this block that we're on here is probably the most racially diverse that we have in the entire city is in part because of those trailers. So I would ask that we be a little bit more sensitive around that subject moving forward. I understand there's different zoning here than there is, say, on the waterfront, but I think we should be sensitive.
Yeah, I'm not getting that at all. I think we're sensitive of all of these units that we have. I think they're all equally important because they all serve a tremendous purpose to the community. So I think we're all acutely aware of the importance of all of them. The second bullet, the first sub-bullet in there. I mean, the review and consider expanding density bonuses, including mandatory programs with increased development capacity in mixed-use and multifamily zones. I would just hate to see some development occur in some of these zones that we've created, for instance, the transit-oriented district, without maximizing the affordability component. And I would hate to not act upon this for a few years and allow development to occur and us miss this window of opportunity.
Well, I think that's why it's recognized on there as a top priority. So
I understand
it's
that,
in
but
the top
it's
four.
Okay. You were saying some of them may not get worked on for 3 or 4 years, and so that's what my concern was.
It's a balance. I think this is showing this is the top priorities, and I think the one highlighted in yellow is a staff recommendation saying this seems to be the most timely issue, and it's not kind of negating that the others are not important. So I think that's the staff recommendation. We've explained the reasons why we think this is a timely issue. And then again, as Laurie said, next time we come back with the work program, so it's an annual thing where we talk to the council about the work program for the council and the planning commission. We'll be having another discussion then about whether it's one of these four or it could be some other topic that moves up the list. So right now it is in the top four, and it will be up for discussion again when we come back next year.
And that's fine. I just don't want to see any opportunities lost.
Right.
All right. Councilmember Swery.
Okay, so we are still on attachment 2, and I am generally in agreement. However, on the discussion of a manufactured housing community overlay, I do have some concerns. And the first one is we've already said that the council is going to be talking about some of the same issues in terms of looking at what we can do to preserve the affordable housing options in manufacture. And so I'm wondering if this, I am actually not a fan of overlays either. It seems like we just add layers and layers of complexity. And so to me, it would make more sense to leave that off or not make it a top priority and then just have us as a council talk about it. And then if we need to do something more with the Planning Commission, it seems strange to me to have both the Planning Commission and us discussing essentially the same thing.
Well, I think the distinction in staff's mind is that the Planning Commission would look at sort of land use related strategies that might work to preserve existing affordable housing. And again, these were just examples. That list is not the end of the list. Whereas the council focus was more on things like relocation assistance or purchase or finance or that kind of thing. We actually felt that it was kind of a good marriage, and that maybe if the Planning Commission looked at, well, what kind of land use options are there, and then they could say, well, there aren't any good ones, or here's one that might work, they could forward that to the council, and then the council could fold that into a discussion about, well, is there a direct assistance piece here that we should consider? I don't
So
know.
you
That
see
that
them
was
as
the thought.
coordinated efforts then? Okay.
Yeah.
Well, in general, like I said, I'm not a big fan of overlays and stuff,
Right.
but I do appreciate your explanation of
Yeah.
what the thinking was behind that.
Right.
So we're agreeing with these four? And we're agreeing with what's yellow? Councilmember Herbig, you're looking perplexed.
Well, just for the sake of discussion, I'd like to move that we move the source of income discrimination up onto that list.
Uh-huh.
This list is a tier 3 right now, and I think it deserves more discussion than it got in the Planning Commission. I think we should be having that discussion here in the next year or so.
Well,
Is that a motion?
Yes.
I don't think, have we had a second yet?
pardon?
Did anybody second that?
Well, I'll second it for discussion.
Okay. Do you want me to speak on it? Okay. I just think as we look at things, as I said earlier, I think that the folks who participated with the Planning Commission came from one community that has a very particular bias, and I understand that bias, but I think that we need to work with the broader community and get more perspectives. And I think one thing that we could do, I'm not saying go as far as like Seattle's going, but we could look at an ordinance to do away with source of income discrimination so that folks that are on Section 8, and I'm not proposing we do this, I'm proposing we put on the list for further discussion down the road. So people that are on Section 8, people that have food vouchers, things like that, and who can pay their rent, don't get discriminated against and aren't given the same opportunities for housing as a lot of other folks. People that are using those programs are already having a hard enough time, and making it even more difficult for them to find a place that they can live in just leads to a greater cycle of poverty, and it makes it almost impossible for folks to get out of that cycle and better themselves. So I would like us to move that up and have a council discussion about that in the next year or so.
And I think that taking it a little bit more broadly in that seniors on fixed incomes, their sources of income, Social Security, or whether they have vouchers, should not be looked down upon as a source of income. I think single mothers should not have child support or alimony discriminated against as a source of income. There's a lot of reasons to why source of income should not be a barrier to renting. Councilmember Curtis.
To me, it seems like these are two different topics. One is preserving and creating more affordable housing, and the other is a discrimination issue. And I think there's different set of laws that relate to those. And I guess I would like to keep this feels like it's on topic, and those other things feel like other kind of semi-related, but yet they're off topic for what we're trying to accomplish here. So I would rather not address those and stay with the staff recommendation.
All right. Thank you. Councilman Danuski.
So how I kind of heard what Councilmember Herbig was recommending is just to put that one up as the fifth bullet on this this list for regulatory approaches, not to say which one is the next one, not to say that it's the first, but just to add that as a bullet that, take it out of Tier 3 and move it up to Tier 1 to have the discussion, not to say which way we need to go. That's kind of how I understood it. Is that correct?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I would support that.
Can I ask a question?
Councilmember
If you're done. Okay. So if I recall, this came up at the last time when we discussed it, and it had to do with the enforcement aspect of it. And what can you remind us how that if we go down that path, because I think that's an important part. If it's not just the issue, it's do we have a mechanism in place, or are we creating a new mechanism to deal with the enforcement side? Could you address that for us?
Other cities have basically used their code compliance officers to deal with the issue when to enforce.
So how can you tell me that? So then, can you give me an example? I mean, yeah.
What's a typical story?
Yeah, I'm just trying to understand how does the code enforcer get into dealing with the, what the reason is for somebody being approved or not approved on a lease?
So what the city's been doing it the longest is Bellevue. We've talked, Kirkland and Redmond also has it on their books. Bellevue found what they tried to do initially, and the Housing Authority helped them, is they did landlord education programs to try to make sure landlords understood what was intended and how the programs work. Then when there are individual complaints, there is sort of a certain protocol that the city enforcement officer, code enforcement, collects information, and more times than not, they very often clear the landlord. There's some other issue why they were denied. So it usually starts there, and if going through that process, there was still an issue with the landlord and code enforcement, then they would bring in city attorney if need be to sort of take it to sort of that legal level. But they have not done a lot. It's almost as much as anything that it creates that awareness and stuff, because there's a lot of reasons why people get denied, and people get denied will put up, well, it's because you're discriminating. More times than not, that isn't the case. But there's sort of an elevation process within the city, and it sounds like it's not very often it gets elevated to the full level. It usually works at the code enforcement level and working with the owner, the manager, and or the resident to sort of create a pathway, more times than not.
Thank you.
Councilmember Curtis.
So if we did this, would we be asked to create Kenmore laws, wait for state laws to be created, or enforce present laws? Somehow I don't understand the connection between the word regulatory approaches and the topic that we're discussing.
So one approach could in the end be we really want to get a statewide and we want to support legislation. Another is cities saying we're not waiting for that, we're adopting our own ordinances so that within our community, this program we would do as a local ordinance source of income discrimination. So that's where I was describing sort of the local enforcement. But another option would be more and more cities go to the state and say, why are we having to deal with this? This should really be resolved at the state level. I mean, that is an option. But as you can see in the last year, a number of cities have said, we feel like the issue is now and we don't want to wait for that. And that's, Kirkland tried that for a number of years. They tried to get state legislation passed, and then they finally decided that they, if that happened, that would be great, and they would probably then back off on theirs, but I think they felt like they needed not to wait.
I guess our approach with our compliance officer was we don't have an aggressive compliance program.
Right.
We sort of don't have the staffing to really do that, and I don't know if I want to add one more thing to their workload. Okay. Right now they sort of cover emergencies and things that come up. Mm-hmm. So I guess I have concerns about how it would fit with other pieces if we start creating laws that then we have to enforce.
Right.
Councilmember Herbig.
I want to thank my colleagues for all of their very thoughtful questions, as always, because they are thoughtful questions, and they're questions that I think we're kind of putting the cart before the horse right now. The question isn't how would we go about doing this. The question is, do we want to discuss it further down the road at some point? And I think staff would probably be better prepared to answer a lot of these questions if this was an item by itself on the agenda at some future meeting. And I do think it fits right in. I mean, this is one of the matrix items that was discussed, and it is a regulatory approach that does, in a way, create more affordable housing by opening up market housing to folks who need assistance to pay that market rent. So it is a regulatory approach that helps open up affordable housing. So I think it fits right in with this. But I think, a lot of the questions being brought up are totally worthy of discussion. But I think that I think the time to have that would be after when we're having a more full discussion and staff has had more time to prepare for that. Because I
guess to me it doesn't seem like it creates one more single unit. One person will go in that spot, or another person will go in that spot. Whoever goes in doesn't create more units.
Right, but you're opening up to folks who are maybe at the lower income, because that's where, if you remember a couple weeks ago, we were looking at what sort of housing Kenmore has available and what income brackets that is provided for, and the issue for us wasn't median or wasn't like 80%. The issue for us was lower income folks. And those are the folks who are having problems finding a place to live. A lot of those folks may be on assistance and may not be able to find a place to live because their landlords say, well, we're not going to take you because we're not going to accept those as forms of income. So in a way, it does help us fix that lower, not in a very small way, help us address that lower income tranche of people, if you will. So.
Yeah, I guess I've seen a number of instances in different cities or heard of incidences where single parents were discriminated against as a source of income because it was alimony or child support. Certainly seniors because of housing vouchers. And so there's a concern there, and it's certainly something I would like to talk about and see as a fifth bullet point on this list. So anyway, there's a motion. On anything else? Anybody else want to speak to the motion here? Councilmember Sperry.
Well, my main concern with this is what's not being said. And what's not being said is, I certainly understand, the challenge for all of us to find affordable housing, and particularly when you have very limited income. But a lot of this is related to forcing landlords to accept what used to be, I think it's still called the Section 8, and that creates an additional regulatory burdens on the landlord. And so while this sounds very good, besides, the other obvious things about, how to even enforce this and what does that look like, you can have an unintended consequence of basically people, potential rental units not even coming on the market because of having to be forced to have an additional regulatory burden because that choice has been now removed from the landlord. And so it can have an effect that is not what we would want. So I will be voting no on this.
All right, any other comments? So the motion on the floor then is to add source of income added as a bullet point for discussion. Clerk, please take the roll.
Councilmember Curtis.
That's you.
Councilmember Curtis.
No.
Mayor Baker.
Yes.
Councilmember Danuski.
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Van Ness.
No.
Councilmember Smith.
No, but I'd also like to add, I do appreciate the fact that this is something that is very near and dear to some people's hearts. I really do, but I think it's putting us in the wrong direction for our city.
Councilor Sperry.
No.
Councilor Herbig.
Yes.
Failed 4-3.
Okay, so now where are we at?
Right, motion fails 4-3.
Motion failed, yeah.
All right. Are we in agreement then on the 4 bullet points and staff recommendation that's highlighted in yellow?
Yes.
I see vigorous nodding. Next.
Number 3.
Well, now you've accomplished 3 of the 4 goals, and the last goal is to adopt by motion the overall housing strategy plan. And so this yellow highlighted item will move forward to the Planning Commission. You've identified the 3 direct assistants that will be looked at in the next year and a half. And by adopting the overall strategy plan, that just says, here's the other list of strategies that we would look at probably on an annual basis to decide which should be moved forward.
Councilmember Herbig.
So I just want to clarify, the strategy plan is just that matrix, right?
The overall, the great big matrix that includes.
Okay, so there's no other text that I'm missing on here. That's just the matrix is what we're adopting.
What attachment are we on?
Attachment 3.
Thank you. Thank you. Appreciate that.
Oh, okay. So there was this is my mistake. There was a monitoring chart that you received last time. So there were the Tier 1, Tier 2, Tier 3, and then there was another set of strategies that were in a kind of a monitoring realm. So it was a separate page, and apparently that page is not with attachment for the overall matrix. So it would be the overall matrix plus those monitoring strategies. They were things that the city had already accomplished and were items that we wanted just to keep an eye on.
Can we bring that up on the overhead, maybe?
Let me see if I can.
Did you?
Yeah.
I printed it off if you want to look at that from last time.
Yeah, it was the last packet. I'm not sure if I can.
We have a copy up here. Ms. Anderson, we do have a copy up here.
Oh, you do? Okay. Yeah, it was a one-page item with things listed that were, again, to be monitored in case they should rise into a priority status. I'm sorry about that.
That's okay. We have a copy.
I just wanted to see what we were actually approving.
That'd be nice, huh?
So this is what you want us to vote on?
No,
that's part of it. That's part of it. The overall strategy.
4 plus this.
Yeah.
All right, so the chair would entertain a motion to adopt the overall strategy plan.
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Hearing none. Clerk, please take the roll.
Councilmember Danuski?
Yes.
Councilmember Curtis?
Yes.
Mayor Baker?
Yes.
Councilor Sperry?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Van Ness?
Yes.
Councilmember Herbig?
Yes.
Councilmember Smith?
Yes.
Passed.
Passes unanimously. Okay. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Back to Councilmember Smith. All right. Staff report.
Nothing, Your Honor.
Oh, my goodness. Heart attack.
Mayor, will you be taking public comment?
Oh, yes, public comment.
We have somebody signed up.
Yes, we do. Public comment on housing strategies.
Randy Banneker.
And I say that just to note that this is also, we've done some excellent work on living into the challenges of income qualified housing, low-income housing. But this is also a really important time to think about your median income housing. And the chief reason is, and you've got some great strategies to pursue in the matrix, and I highlighted the ones that we think are most beneficial for you to pursue. But the reason is that the demand for housing in Kenmore is going to keep going.
Absolutely.
You saw it tonight with the CrossFit. I mean, that is community. Those people, they are young and they are old and everything in between, and they are here in one stage. And it's important to think about alternative housing types to accommodate those folks in Florida. Other jurisdictions right now, particularly those on I-90, several of them have launched into moratorium. And they've done so because they feel like they're on the backs of their heels. The demand is just overwhelming the redevelopment that they're seeing, the price increases. And so I am just encouraging you to think about some of the strategies here for more efficient use of your residential zone land. EDUs are critical right now. Thinking about being smarter, more cost-effective in building out your multifamily or OZA. Thinking about single reform. All those things can save time and cost while still preserving your control over the process and community character. So I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Banneker.
That's it.
That's it?
Yep.
All right, go Cubbies. All right. Councilmember reports, comments. Councilmember Smith.
I had nothing to say, but I do want to just add something based on the last speaker, and it has to do with not on the broker side of my business, but the appraisal side. There was a purchase about 5 blocks from here, and I just worked on the appraisal of it. It was a house that sold well over list price, and it had 25 offers.
Wow.
So that tells you something about, and I did not think it was ridiculously priced. That's what's incredible. If it was ridiculously priced, that's one thing, but 25 offers, that tells you something about the demand out there.
Yeah, it does. It does indeed. Councilmember Sperry.
Nothing at this time.
Councilmember Curtis.
Nothing for me.
Councilmember Herbig.
Nothing to add.
Councilmember Danuski.
Dad.
You guys are asking for it. Deputy Mayor.
The hour's late. I have all sorts of stuff to tell you about from the National League of Cities meeting, but I'm not going to do it tonight. We'll do it some other night.
Well, and the big thing was 3 of us went to a really important meeting, and nobody is talking about it.
Next time.
Fine. So, proclamation for Gabby Bormeo on Thursday. Gabby Bormeo is on The Voice. She's a Kenmore resident. And so she is going to be here, and I'm not supposed to make this for the press, but she will be singing a few songs for us, and she will be here Thursday night at 5:30, and we'll be giving her a proclamation on Thursday, 5:30. No, I am not. I'm just letting you know. I'm just letting you know that we will be doing a proclamation. Okay. News from your neck of the woods. Senate transportation budget out. $1.5 million for the 522 crossing is not included in either the House or the Senate transportation budget. Well, there's supposedly, Brianna knows something, who knows. $19.5 million for safe routes to school. Arrowhead is not included on the Senate side. If you guys get a chance and go to AWC, take the Urban Planning for Public Officials. It's a tremendous class. Alan and I have done it, and it's going to be offered every session, so it will be offered again in Charlotte. If you have the opportunities, take it. One last thing. There's a nice little old lady in National League of Cities. Her name's Betty Taylor. Betty Taylor's 91 years old. Listening to our city manager, I'm going to have to live into my 90s and serve so I can see Lake Point happen. With that, we're adjourned.